we're in third reading, so let's kind of get back in that mode. All right, we are still in that order of business of bills on third reading. The next bill for our consideration is Senate File 88.
Senate File 88, sponsored by Travel, hunting licenses, weighted bonus point system, an act relating to game and fish being enacted by the legislature of the state of Wyoming.
We have amendments. Representative Banks.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I move third reading amendment number 1 to Senate File 88, and I'll withdraw it at the appropriate time. Ladies and gentlemen, I just want to bring back the conversation of what we're really doing here. It's a drastic change, and it's a change that's going to affect a lot of people in the state. You know, I've got a lot of constituents who are sportsmen, guides, outfitters, all of the above that this will directly affect. It changes the course of what we've had for decades with this policy of what these points have been and what this system has done, and they've put in their diligence and their time, their money. In essence, this is a contract with the state of Wyoming to those who have put in for this tag for 30 years. And now we're going to come in here and we're going to say, we're not going to honor that contract. That's what it amounts to. You know, selfishly, I like the idea. I'm way under the necessary points to draw the tag, but we got to think outside ourselves sometimes and do what's best for the people, for our constituents, and for Wyoming. And understanding that this system is going to come to a complete halt, and we're going to tell people, sorry, you're no longer going to get that dream hunt. You're going to go back to ground zero, and your time and effort and money is going to be put to waste. So I have a few ideas. I'm not going to dive into that. I'm going to stick to this bill of what we can do. There's far better ways to address this that's going to equal out those who put into the system and those who haven't, those who would like to get into the draw system. There's far better ways to do this. And I'm ready to have those conversations, sit down and fix this so that we have both sides presented. We've got to be able to do what's best for the majority of our constituents. And because of that, I stand in opposition to this bill. And I hope we can put this aside and come up with something better, because I'm ready to have those conversations. So I urge a no vote on this bill. Thank you.
Chairman Harshman, would you come up here and take the chair? Chairman Newsom, for your first time.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. On and against this particular amendment and for the bill. The wildlife, or the task force that the governor set up to look at wildlife issues within our state, came up with this particular bill and this particular way to solve a problem. The problem that we have is an increasing demand for these tags and a decreasing supply of animals. The current system we have is unsustainable long-term. This system protects those folks who have all the points for 4 years, and that they will have that dream of drawing. And then beyond that, other people who have many points, those points will be cubed, in this case, with the amendment that the good representative from Sheridan brought. So if you have 18 or 19 or 20 points, those points will be cubed at this point as entries into the lottery system. Now, is there the chance that somebody who just has one entry into the lottery system will win? Absolutely. That is a real possibility. Is there a greater chance that somebody who has their points cubed will have a greater chance of winning and drawing in that lottery? Absolutely. This is not perfect in any way, shape, or form, but it does address what is currently a failing system. So I'm on against the amendment and for the bill. Thank you.
Mr. Speaker, for your first time. Mr. Chairman, thank you. And I'm not sure I'm going to vote for this bill, but I do want to say much of the same thing that Chairman Newsom said. And that's that our current system is not sustainable. It will not allow, in the long run, it will not allow anybody young to be able to have, and by young, I mean 40 years of age. I'm 60, right? So it's not sustainable long-term in providing any kind of opportunity for hunters. And so if this amended version of 88 is not the path, then what is the path? And that's the question I have. And, I have some ideas on how I'd have done it different. I brought those, they failed in that committee. But in the end, and we heard tons of testimony on this, and there was, I would say, far more support for the idea of going to bonus points than there was staying with the current preference points. Like I said, I don't know that I'm going to vote for this bill, but I think this was an honest effort to try to bridge this gap that needs to be fixed. And hunters are very divided on how we fix this. So I just wanted to kind of put that out there. I was the lone no vote on this bill or on this idea in the task force at the end, I think. Or it might have been one other.
Representative Byron, first time.
Thank you, Chairman. I really appreciate the bringing of this amendment because there's been a lot of talk on and off the floor about this in a short amount of time, but I want the body to remember the hundreds and hundreds of hours that this task force did put in, and I want to honor that by saying that, and the bringer of the amendment said we're ready to put in some more work. I've talked to many people about this, and I think the work's been put in, and I think we're at a crossroads now that I would obviously be a nay on the amendment and an aye on the bill. So thank you.
Representative Winter for your first time.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I, unlike you, already know how I'm going to vote. But to me, we're just kicking the can down the road further. There's too many instances where the bonus point does not work any better than the preference point. So we just need to try to figure out some way to take care of these people that have spent all this money and time trying to get a license, and then go back to take your chances each year. So vote no.
Representative Alaman for your first time.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. We're just piling one bad bill on a bad system. This bonus points aren't going to work. The best thing we can do is maybe in 4 years, quit giving out any more preference points, and in 4 years, get rid of that bill. And just go back to a random draw where everybody is on the same footage. And I think that's the only way this is going to work in the long run, because these bonus points, we're just kicking the can down the road. Thank you.
Chairman Burkhart for your first time.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. So, ladies and gentlemen, we talk about these points. And one important issue is there are people out there, there are a lot of people who have 20 or more points. That alone says the system doesn't work as it is currently. I remember when they started this system, and yes, I've been putting in since they started it. At the time, the idea was in 5 to 10 years, you were almost guaranteed of a license. And at the animal numbers in those days, you probably were. But over time, over the last, you get a point a year. If you apply and you don't draw a license, you get a point. If you don't want to even do that, you can buy a point. Over the years, so some people have 25 points. 25 years, the animal numbers are down, and they are down tremendously. We need to come up with a better idea of giving people the opportunity to hunt these animals. And it's an opportunity. There's no guarantee. I wouldn't want a guarantee. What fun is that? You know, you hunt sheep, you can spend literally weeks in the mountains and not see one. Then again, you can see one getting out of your truck. And that's the opportunity. It's not for bragging rights. It's for the experience. The current point system doesn't work. Can you come up with a different system? Sure, I think everyone in here could come up with a different system. But the issue is, none of them are perfect. You had a number of people, as the good speaker had said, who spent, I believe it was 18 months looking at this issue. We had citizens, we had hunters, outfitters, ranchers, other people, and that, go look at the diverse background of the people on this committee. Some were hunters, on the task force rather. Some were hunters, some were not. They spent a lot of time. They looked at other states. You know, the state to the south of us has a trophy elk area. You're stuck putting in that area for at least, I believe it's 17 years before you stand any chance of getting a license, any. And if you miss a year, you're out. And that, I looked at it years ago and thought, well, you know, you're balancing inevitability with age versus getting a license. And that, there aren't any perfect systems. A lot of people spend a lot of time on this. And do I think it's perfect? No. Do I like it exactly? No, but I can sure support the bill. So on and for the bill and against the amendment.
Anybody else for their first time? Anybody for their second? Representative Henderson for your first time?
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I'm against the amendment and I'm against the bill. If you want it bad, you're going to get it bad. And I think I've heard enough people suggest that this isn't where we want to be, so why would we pass it? Maybe we keep working. You know, I mentioned before, I had an opportunity years ago when I put in for a moose tag and I got it. That's a good memory. Had a good hunt, even though I missed. But in those days, we didn't have this bonus system where you kind of stack your way in, or you buy your points and stack your way in and hope some year you'll get lucky. I don't think that's the right way to go. I think the best way is to keep working and talking and working together to resolve what we need to resolve. But this is not the bill that I think is going to fix it. So I would vote no on the bill, no on the amendment. Thank you.
Representative Stivary for your first time.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. For the amendment against the bill. I've drawn my moose tag. I got my moose. That was the year, the following year, that's when they started the preference points. So I'm already 5 points behind. It needs to be a random draw. Vote no on the bill.
Anybody else for their first time? Anybody for their second time before the sponsor? Representative Banks, bring us home.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I appreciate the good discussion. I've heard over and over, and I would agree with this. The system we have now doesn't work. I agree with that. It doesn't work. But trying to fix it with this is almost like trying to fix a leaking roof with rotting wood. It might look good, but eventually it's going to break, and that's not the road we want to go down. And I appreciate the work of the task force. I'm not saying that they didn't put in hard work, but all of us have put in lots of work on bills to find out that that's not the direction we wanted to go. And so I'm willing to put in the work, and I know there's lots of people on this floor who want to put in the work to make the system better and to make a system that's fair equally among both sides. We heard a comment that says hunters are very divided on this. Well, this only sees one side of that division and only aids one side of that division. I think we can come up with a system that is favorable to everybody. With that, I withdraw the amendment and urge a no vote on the bill.
Third reading amendment number 1 to Senate File 88 has been withdrawn. Senate File 88 having been read 3 separate times, the question is, shall the bill pass? Chief Clerk, please call the roll.
Allemand? Allred? Andrew, Angelos, Banks, Bear, Berger, Brown, Burkhart, Byron, Chadwick, Chestick, Klauston, Conrad, Crago, Davis, Eklund, Haroldson, Harshman, Heiner, Henderson, Warnock, Jennings, Knapp, Larson Lloyd, Larson JT, Lawley, Locke, Nyman, Newsom, Nicholas, Nemec, Northrup, Oakley, Obermuller, O'Hearn, Olson, Ottman, Pendergraft, Penn, Penn, Provenza, Rodriguez Williams, Sherwood. I'm sorry, repeat. Singh, Slagle, Smith, Stith, Storer, Strock, Stivar, Tarver, Trujillo, Walters, Ward, Washut, Western, Winter, Wiley, Yin, Zwanitzer Dan, Zwanitzer Dave, Speaker Summers. Are there any changes? Harshman, aye to no. Further changes? Closing vote. Vote closed. 22 aye, 40 no.
Senate File 88, having failed to receive the affirmative vote of the majority of the members elected to the House, Senate File 88 has failed to pass the House. We're at that order of business of request to concur with, nope, two more. Oh, yeah, might want to. All right, so I wanted to get done. The next bill for our consideration is Senate File 91.
Senate File 91, sponsored by Senator Nethercott. Creation of tenancy by the entirety. An act relating to property being enacted by the legislature of the state of Wyoming.
Representative Crago.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I move third reading amendment number 1 to Senate File 91 and ask for your favorable consideration. Members, this is an applicability clause. Essentially, it's just clarifying that we are not changing existing law as it currently stands in Wyoming so that someone couldn't run into court and say, oh, you passed a law, you must have intended to change the law. We're making it very clear that we're not. We're just confirming what the law already is based on a court case. We felt like we had to do that. And so that's the purpose of the bill and the purpose of the amendment. I would stand for any questions.
Anybody else for their first time? Question being called. All those in favor of third reading amendment number 1 to Senate File 91 signify by saying aye. Aye. All those opposed? Third reading amendment number 1 to Senate File 91 has been adopted. Senate File 91 having been read 3 separate times, the question is, shall the bill pass? Chief Clerk, please call the roll.
Allemand. Allred. Andrew. Angelos. Banks. Bear. Berger. Brown. Burkhart. Byron. Chadwick. Chestick. Klauston. Conrad. Crago. Davis. Eklund. Haroldson. Harshman. Heiner. Henderson. Hornock. Jennings. Knapp. Larson Lloyd. Larson JT. Lawley. I'm sorry, repeat. Locke. Nyman. Newsom. Nicholas. Nemec. Northrup. Oakley. Obermueller. O'Hearn. Olson. Ottman. Pendergraft. Penn. Provenza. Rodriguez Williams. Sherwood. Singh. Slagle. Smith. Stiff. Storer. Strock. Stivar. Tarver. Trujillo. Walters. Ward. Washut. Western. Winter. Wiley. Yin. Zwanitzer Dan. Zwanitzer Dave. Speaker Summers. Are there any changes? Closing vote. Vote closed. 62 aye.
Senate File 91, having received the affirmative vote of the majority of the members elected to the House, Senate File 91 has passed the House. The next bill for our consideration is Senate File 71.
Senate File 71, sponsored by Appropriations, State Loan and Bond Programs, an act relating to state public purpose investments being enacted by the legislature of the state of Wyoming.
We have an amendment. Representative Locke.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I respectfully withdraw third reading amendment number 1 to Senate File 71.
Third reading amendment number 1 to Senate File 71 has been withdrawn. Senate File 71 having been read 3 separate times, the question is, shall the bill pass? Chief Clerk, please call the roll.
Allemand. Allred. Andrew. Angelos. Banks. Bear. Berger. Brown. Burkhart. Byron. Chadwick. Chestick. Klauston. Conrad. Crago. Davis. Eklund. Haroldson. Harshman. Heiner. Henderson. Hornock. Jennings. Knapp. Larson Lloyd. Larson JT. Lawley. Locke. Nyman. Newsom. Nicholas. Nemec. Northrup. Oakley. Obermueller. O'Hearn. Olson. Ottman. Pendergraft. Penn. Provenza. Rodriguez Williams. Sherwood. Singh. Slagle. Smith. Stiff. Storer. Strock. Stivar. Tarver. Trujillo. Walters. Ward. Washut. Western. Winter. Wiley. Yin. Zwanitzer Dan. Zwanitzer Dave. Speaker Summers. Are there any changes? Are there any changes? Closing vote. Vote closed. 62 aye.
Senate File 71, having received the affirmative vote of the majority of the members elected to the House, Senate File 71 has passed the House. Representative Baird, I believe you have a motion.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I move, according to House Rule 5-6, that Senate File 144, Chloe's Law, be moved from number 2 appropriations to number 10 labor and health.
Okay, the seconds, Alaman, Stivar, Slagle, Ottman, Penn. So I'm going to read Rule 5-6. It says, any bill or other matter which has been referred to any committee may be recalled after a reasonable time by a motion duly made and seconded by 5 members and adopted by a majority of the elected members. My recollection is this bill, Chief Clerk, I need to know when that bill was referred, when it was introduced. Okay, so that bill 144 was referred to committee yesterday, and I'm going to rule that this motion is out of order because a reasonable time has not been allowed for that committee to hear that bill. So if you want to overrule my ruling, then you'd have to bring a motion to overrule the ruling of the chair that a reasonable time has not occurred for that bill to have been heard in that committee. So I overrule your motion. Representative Baer.
Mr. Speaker, I so move.
So move what?
I so move that we challenge your ruling from the chair.
Okay. Now that, I believe all of these are debatable. So it's standard motion. Chief, you got any knowledge? Chairman Zwanitzer, it's debatable, right? Appeal of the chair is debatable as far as I know. So, yep. All right, so Representative Baer, explain, and you have to stick to the motion, and that, which is why that rule should apply when I say it shouldn't apply right now.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. We have many, many bills right now, and this particular committee that I'm moving it to does not have very many bills, so I think in a reasonable amount of time, this would be heard, and I believe having it heard this week will help it, the bill advance. And I think that this is something that the state is very interested in us setting a policy. So therefore, I believe it's important that we advance it.
Chairman Harshman, could you come take the chair for a minute? Mr. Speaker. Mr. Chairman, thank you. On and against the motion. First and foremost, the committee I send it to has the most senior membership in this body. They can meet 3 times a day, 5 days a week. They can hear any bill in any amount of time. 1 day is not a reasonable amount of time to have heard any bill. In fact, it could hardly have been noticed for today. And so based on that, I don't think a reasonable amount of time has gone by, and I would ask for your no vote on this objection or overrule.
Representative Penn for your first time.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I would be in favor of the challenge to overrule. I think that As we heard just before lunch, the Committee 10 is not meeting in the morning because we don't have bills to hear. And the committee where this bill currently sits is probably the busiest committee of them all. And I think
Point of
that-
order.
Point of order. What's your point?
The point is this is not relevant to whether one day is unreasonable or not, which is the only thing we're discussing.
Okay, point taken. Let's continue and stay on this motion to appeal and overrule the chair.
Mr. Chairman,
Please proceed.
thank you. One day is a reasonable enough time to realize that Committee 10 has no bills to hear. Thank you.
Okay, Representative Heiner for your first time.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. A reasonable amount of time is very vague in definition, and it's hard to quantify. So the question I have is, what would be, in the speaker's mind, what is a reasonable amount of time? Thank you.
Representative Larson Lloyd for your first time. No. Representative Banks.
Thank you. Surprised the point of order didn't come. Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I, as a freshman, feel that we rush a lot of things, that we're go, 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 that we have to get through stuff. And so one day I feel, just with the precedent we've set this session, is in a reasonable amount of time to have had a bill come before committee, see it, I mean, have something done with it. So I support the motion to overrule.
Representative Western for your first time.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. On and against the motion to overrule the ruling of the chair. I certainly support this bill, and it deals with an important topic that needs to be discussed. And I certainly think it's one thing if it had been sitting in committee for weeks or even 4 or 5 days, but it just got referred. We need to let the process work. And so I think that this is premature, overrushed, and I encourage a no vote. Thank you.
Representative Brown, first time.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker, oh, you're Mr. Squeaker right now. Mr. Squeaker, thank you.
Representative Brown, correction, that's squeaker. Proceed, Representative Brown.
Thank you. I rise in support, or rise in opposition of the overruling of the chair, and for 2 reasons. Number one, we respect the process. We put the leaders in position to do what they're doing. We have chairmen that will hear the bills when they're heard. But mainly for my second reason, that actually doing this overriding and potentially moving this bill actually pushes the amount of time back that this bill could be heard. Because if it is moved over to the next committee, the earliest it can be heard is next Wednesday. So I'm not sure that this is really what we want to do, is continue to try to override the leadership that we've elected and the decisions that were made, number one. But number two, the chairmen that are in charge of these committees. The body will rule, though, on and against.
Representative Yin, first time.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. So, I guess this is really a question of, do our rules actually matter, or do we as the body not care what's in the rules? Because I really don't understand how we can say that one day elapsed is a reasonable amount of time when not even all of our committees meet every day. None of our committees, except for the committee that it got referred to, that's the only one that meets every day. So to argue that one day is a reasonable amount of time seems baffling to me, is I guess the word that I would use. So I would urge you to vote no on overruling the speaker's ruling, because I think our rules that we set and we all agreed to at the beginning of the year actually matter. And I think overruling the speaker in this decision is a little bit of folly. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Okay, Representative Ottman, first time.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Just a point to go along with the past couple speakers. Yes, we're following rules. This is Rule 5.6. Yes, it is procedure. And the thing is doing it today, since we found out a committee is available, they could meet on it tomorrow. So it's just to help things along. We all know we have tons of bills to listen to if they're going to be heard. So we're just trying to help that along. Nobody knew that there was going to be this availability. So it's just one of those things. So it's not going against anybody in particular or for any specific reason. It's just to get a bill heard and taken from one committee that is very, very burdened with bills and budget, which we're hoping to get to here shortly, and to assigning it to another committee where the chairman is more than willing. Thank you.
Any other members, first time? Representative Nicholas, first time.
Thank you. On and against the motion. Our plan is to hear this bill on Tuesday.
Okay, any other members, first time? Okay, we're going to move to second time. Any members, second time that spoke first? Now, this motion, it wasn't expressed by the mover of this, but this is House Rule 8-4, an appeal. That's what the motion is, an appeal, and I'll just read it. A vote of the majority of the members present shall be sufficient to sustain an appeal from a decision of the presiding officer. It's Rule 8-4. Members present. Okay, we're gonna, anybody else, second time before the maker of the motion, Representative Bear, second time.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I just think it's been said that this committee that it has the bill now meets 3 times a day, or at least it can. So the one day is a little bit different when you have a committee that can meet that often. But again, that committee is loaded. So I would just urge your aye vote, and I call for the question.
Okay, members, to be clear now, voting on this Rule 8-4, an appeal of the ruling of the presiding officer, an aye vote means you approve the appeal, and you want to move this bill immediately to Labor Health Committee. Your aye vote will move this bill. A no vote, you will support the speaker's ruling on the reasonable time and will keep the bill where it's at. Aye vote to move the bill, a no vote to keep the bill where it's at. Chief Clerk, please call the roll. Okay, Chief Clerk informs me, since we're going to first protocol be a voice vote, and then we'll probably have a division, we'll go to standing division on it. Okay, so again, all those in favor then of the appeal, please say aye. Aye. All those opposed, please say no. No. Okay, the appeal has failed. Division being called. All those in favor of the appeal, please stand. Okay, all those opposed to the appeal, please stand. Okay, the appeal of the speaker's ruling has failed on a vote of 35 to 25. Okay, Mr. Speaker.
All right, Chief, I think we're done with third reading, right? We're good. So before we go into concurrence, we will do the budget. And so we're going to have the JCC 1 on, yes, it's House Bill 1. We're going to have that report by our good Appropriations Committee, and we'll start out with, and kind of how we'll do this. I think it'd be fair to say that it would be second reading questioning, so you could only go up twice, but certainly people will be allowed to ask questions through the process. So are you guys going to do it by sections? Mr. Chairman, thank you. So probably what I'll do is I'll just do 2 by section and allow people to come up on each section that's talked about if you got questions, and we'll run it that way. Yeah, I'll give a privilege of the floor to Representative Larson to give a preview.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Privilege of the floor, if I may.
Please.
So as we get ready to go through the conference committee report, we want to make sure that you have the documents. You should have the conference committee summary report. It's on the legal page. And we'll be referring to that when we go through and explain it. We'll be doing it page by page, but that'll be the one we work off from. You should also have a copy of the joint conference report. Now, you may have a couple of them. One is signed and one isn't signed. This shows the adoption of all the House amendments, all of the Senate amendments, and then in the back it will show you the amended Section 300s. So as we get in and talk about how some of those funds went into the reserve accounts and the Wyoming's tomorrow, those footnotes will be in this document. There's also a document that it says summary of fund movements and savings. As we get talking about savings, you may have some questions on how that movement takes place. This will be for your reference, be a good thing for you to have as you visit with your folks back home. Then, Mr. Chairman, probably one of the other, besides the summary sheet, the most important document you'll have is the comparative positions on House Bill 1 spending and savings that showed the position from the House, the Senate, and where we ended up in Joint Conference Committee. And so with that, Mr. Speaker, I'd like to just take a brief moment and explain what happened during the conference committee and what what the two bodies done in this supplemental budget session. Get my right stuff here. So I think one of the most important things, or well, there's several things that really happened in the supplemental budget that is, I think, noteworthy. One is it was the shortest budget deliberation, might be the right word, that we've had since I've been in the legislature. The number of days in getting the budget bill out with a couple of weeks left in the session just has not happened. The amount of time that the public, our colleagues and the public have had to review the budget bill before we started debating it is the most we've ever had. 10 days to review the budget bill before we ever started talking about it. There's some interesting things in the bill. In this supplemental budget, we spent $383 million of general funds, which leaves, which is just a little bit less than what we have outstanding. So in other personal or committee bills. So and that's unusual. Normally your budget has far more spending in it than the other bills that are coming in that we'll be debating. But there's still bills out there. I think there's still bills out there that contain $175 million worth of appropriations that we'll debate. And so it's just about split. It's interesting that for every dollar we spent, so we spent $383 million in the budget bill, we saved $3.50. Every dollar spent, we saved $3.50. We put into savings in the supplemental budget $1.4 billion with a B dollars. More into savings than we ever put in a budget bill, even during the boom times. So, if you'll look at that, and 55% of that savings is into the permanent, the PMTF and the Common School Permanent Land Fund. A like amount of, I want to say, about, I'll find it here, $367 million into the PMTF, $367 million into the Permanent Land Fund. We set up the reserve accounts. We funded if you would look at the top of the comparative portion in section 1, it shows where we ended up with $115 million in the BRA. It's showing the LSRA at 1.4, the school foundation program at $232 million. We're generally happy to come out of here and leaving $1 million in there. We're at double of that. Then we've got the school foundation reserve account with $63 million. Water One, you'll recall we added some money there. We've got $27 million there. The reserve account for the PMTF has $507 million. The Common School Permanent Land Fund reserve account has $569. The PMTF now has $9 billion with a B, $593,600,000, and the Common School Permanent Land Fund will now have $4 billion with a B, $957,600,000. In our appropriations, we were really close to the Senate. We done a couple of things that they didn't. We put that $160 million into the governors into savings, and they spent it. But as we worked out, we really came out pretty close on those appropriations for spending at $356 million. And then the total was at 899 with all of the funds out of the LSRA and school capital construction. Remember, that was in there as well. Then if you come down to the transfer to savings, you'll recall that we put $500,000 into the state fair. The cultural trust fund, we added $9 million. That leaves us at 27, so that's just $3 million shy of having that fully funded. The wildlife trust fund, we added another 10 with another almost $1 million that they can use for matching funds to get to the exact amount that they need. We have the Wyoming's Tomorrow Endowment Fund. We have that at $60 million, but that's just in the bill, the budget bill. We had it at 40 and reduced it to 20. Then we have our reserve accounts. And so at the end of the day, down at the bottom, you're going to see that at 1.380686740 into savings, and with the potential of really being about 1.45, depending on what we do with these other accounts. So Mr. Chairman, the intent of your committee number 2 coming into this supplemental session was to try and save, but I didn't. I'm really pleased to report to you that we saved far beyond our expectations, and I would now like to have our committee take the body through the summary sheet and explain how the conference committee adjusted. And then at the end, Mr. Chairman, what we do, we voted on House, we voted on the budget bill, right? So we either voted for or we voted against what we done here. We went to conference committee. Then we're going to, then we'll vote on concurrence or to adopt the joint committee report. So with that, Mr. Chairman, I'll turn the time back to you. Thank you.
Yeah, so how I'm going to do this, just to repeat, I'll let the propes go through each, whatever section Chairman Nicholas goes through, and then we can ask questions, so if they're in your mind right then. And then we'll go to the next person and then ask questions and just kind of roll through it like that. So Chairman Nicholas.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I would move Joint Conference Committee Number 1 to House Bill 1 and ask for your approval. And we will walk through and explain this to you. So we're asking you to approve $1.4 billion in savings, because that's what this bill does. And it's so if everyone goes to their summary sheet, I'm going to do the first page. So it's the larger one. The first page is the easiest one. That's why I'm going to do it. These are all identicals, basically. And so if you look at 1 through 22, we adopted half of the Senate files on the top and then half of the House files on the bottom, because basically they're identical. I'll just briefly touch on what they are, just to refresh your memory. So number 1 was has to do with a position in the governor's office that for the Education Commission of States, we simply moved that back, took it out of the governor's, from the Department of Education and put it back into the governor's office. So you may recall what our discussions on that. Then going down to 3 and 4, this has to do with the Thyra Thompson building and $412,000 for general services for the operations of the Thyra Thompson building. You may recall we had not funded that recently constructed building, but we hadn't put the ongoing operational costs until today and in this budget. So then if you go down to the next line, which is 5 and 6, this has to do with $350,000 so that we can open this Capitol building, particularly during the summer on the weekends. Then if you go down to 7 and 8, this is a position in the Department of Environmental Quality. What this bill does, we add about 18 new positions in the supplemental budget. Most of them are related in one way or another, either to the DEQ or your water board, your state engineer, basically fortifying those 8 entities, because they lost a bunch of positions over the budget cuts in the prior years, so that we can continue to pursue our economic development, get our permits out, and do the work that's needed for the Colorado River Compact and things like that. So that's primarily what most of those the new positions are for. So then down to 9 and 10, this is $8.6 million for the WyoLink. That's for the ongoing operational costs of WyoLink. That's just what it costs. And so we're funding that. Then if you go down to 11 and 12, this is $20,000 having to do with an all-inclusive care for the elderly study program. Then if you go down to 13 and 14, this is $500,000 to the DFS for one-to-one matching for clients with high behavioral health needs. And I think you can recall when we talked about that. Going down to 15 and 16, this increases the amount of funds in the RGP programs. That's the Mineral Royalty Grant Program that our 5 electeds have authority of and grant to our local communities. Then if you go down to 17 and 18, $300,000 School of Energy Resources for analysis, feasibility study for graphite, high-grade graphite with coal or other sources. Then 19 and 20, this is 22. This is the ECA, basically funding our educational requirements, $22 million. And down in the last one is 21-22, Wildlife Trust Challenge account, $958,000. And once again, These are things we've already voted for, and these were identical, so there's no action. We're just adopting one position or the other. Thank you.
Any questions of Chairman Nicholas on that first page? Not Representative Sherwood?
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. So I am on page 2 of your large sheet here. Sorry about the prop. So items number 23 and 24, these are technical corrections. So they're considered to be non-identical amendments, but they're very similar. So we deleted the House version of this amendment, and we deleted and further amended the Senate version. And you'll see there, if you go all the way over to the right page under description, that we eliminated the correction to the line that discussed that prior appropriation for funding for the airport tower. So a delete and further amend on line 24. Line 25 and 26 were both adopted. Excuse me. So these are to the state's treasurer's office, allowing an increase in funds, special revenue, so not general funds, to be used for increased compensation for the chief technology officer in that office. Line 26 is to A&I, and this is a decrease in the funding for a building security guard there in the Casper building. Line 27 is a delete and further amend to A&I, and this coincides with line 28, which was adopted. And so this was the survey of state employees. So on the House side, we wanted to understand the feasibility of providing childcare for state employees, and so we added that to the study of the survey of employees who might be interested in moving to Riverton to work. So now it is one study with multiple questions for the same amount of money. Line 29 is deleting the Senate's position on funding for the marketing for the state fair. Line 30 is an adopted of the House's position. This is an increase to the Department of Revenue for a position to administer the property tax refund program, so that when our constituents are seeking refunds, there's a person to help them with that. And line 31 is a delete and further amend. So this is to ensure that we are not stacking funds for the property relief program in multiple bills. So it is a contingency that essentially the stay at $5 million. And you'll see there's a reference to House Bill 98, 99, and 121, which are still in play. So the funding in those bills would be reduced dollar for dollar up to $5 million.
Chairman Washut, do you have a question?
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I do. You briefly made some comment about an airport tower, and I didn't catch all of that. Would you fill me in, please?
Representative Sherwood?
Mr. Speaker, thank you for the question. So again, this is embedded in those technical corrections on line 23 and 24. If you go to the line 24, all the way to the bottom, far right, you'll see that we are deleting a technical correction that the other body made to maintain the House's position, so that the funding that was priorly appropriated stays in the budget bill for that airport tower to be constructed.
All right. Representative Knapp, were you headed to the mic to ask a question on this page? If not, we'll go to Representative Larson.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. We're on page 3 on item 32. We delete and further amend House Second Reading Amendment number 7, and this is the Cultural Trust Fund, where we reduced the House position of $6 billion by half to $3 million. That's, and as I mentioned earlier, that brings the total to that corpus up to $27 million on item 33. We deleted Senate Second Reading Amendment number 21, where they took out a requested position in the Department of Construction. We put that back in after reminding them of the conversation we had with that agency. This is helping with the procurement and accounting analysts that they have in the need in that, and so they adopted our position and we removed that. Item number 34, we deleted House third reading amendment number 4. This was some language that we put in there that was relevant to some other bills where they, where general funds were used for Board of Control, where we have for the past several years used Water One funds. So we put some language in there talking about which document governed. We in working with the Senate and looking at the 2 bills that are out there, we're going to resolve that issue in the 2 water bills, and so that's all deleted. Item 35, we delete and further amend House third reading amendment number 4, where there is a request for a position in the state engineer's office. That same position exists in House Bill 22. The consensus between both bodies is that the position is needed, but doesn't need to be duplicated. So depending on what House Bill 222 does will depend on whether this position comes out of this action or out of the House Bill 222. In item 36, we adopt Senate second reading amendment number 22 on the Wildlife Trust Fund. That was some language added in at the request of the agency to make sure that this, you'll recall that we put that money in there because this agency is more nimble in handling this type of natural resource issues. And so the action in the footnote was to make sure that it's not subject to the standard application process that would come into effect. Item number 37, we deleted House second reading amendment number 12, which was the PACE program. Item 38, we delete and further amend House third reading amendment number 4, Department of Health, Healthcare Financing. We directed the department to do a rebasing study for the comprehensive waiver and community-based services. We had an appropriation in there for the committee. We reduced that amount from 100,000 to 50,000. In items 39 and 40, we delete and further amend Senate second reading amendment number 27 and adopt House third reading amendment number 27, and this is dealing with the wait list where we reduced, the Senate had eliminated any of that funding, and we brought that back by 50%, that $3,775,000, and it can be used for comprehensive and support waivers, and that'll be biennialized moving forward. In item number 41, we adopt House second reading amendment number 43, where the House put in $500,000 general funds matched by federal funds for the preventive and diversion services efforts in the Department of Family Services. In item 42, there was 2 actions here in the Senate. We delete both of them because they actually just nullified each other. Senate second reading amendment number 31 and Senate third reading amendment number 9. And finally, item 44, we adopt House third reading amendment number 6, state lands and investments, where we increase the compensation. We recall this was, I think, a request from the executive branch and the agency for a different position than what we had authorized, increases that authorized position for a specialist to policy and for policy and planning. So, Mr. Chairman, I'm happy to take any questions on those actions.
Any questions on page 3? Not. Representative Walters for page 4.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, or Mr. Speaker, excuse me. We are on page 4, item number 45, House third reading amendment number 28. This was a delete and further amend, and this is in relation to the Physician's Assistant School over at the Good University, and we reduced that number from $10 million for the standing up of that program to $7.5 million. Moving on to item number 46, Senate second reading amendment number 35. This again is at the university, and this is was adopted, and we in that adoption, we reduced 500,000 from the College of Education for the education initiatives. Item number 47 was adopted. This is Senate third reading number 11, and this is for again for the university, and this is $2 million for what is called LIDAR and GIS type mapping with LIDAR. Item 48 was deleted, and this is House second reading amendment number 18, excuse me, and this was in regards to the university doing a study to see what it would take to provide in-person classes in Cheyenne and Rock Springs. Item 49 was deleted, which was House second reading amendment number 16. This was at the university and the School of Energy Resources, $175,000 for an economist positions to study graphite uses. Item 50 was deleted, Senate third reading amendment number 12 in the Department of Corrections for $250,000 of the opioid settlement to be used as therapeutics to treat persons on probation and parole. Item 51 was deleted, and in that is Senate second reading amendment 36, which means that $141,000 for a program manager position will be included in this year's budget. Item 52 and 53, our good friends down the hall really took care of this on their own. So Senate second reading amendment number 37 and Senate third reading amendment 13 were both deleted in the conference committee action, and that was in regards to the business ready communities adding $30 million to their account. They first removed it, and then they added it right back, so they corrected their own action. The conference committee still had to act on it, and so deleted both of those actions. Item 54 was a delete and further amend. This is Senate second reading amendment number 38 to the Business Council and their Community Facilities Program. And this is going to be further amended into item 81 on the back page. But in this amendment, the total amount was amended to be $5.5 million. And I'll explain the remainder in item 81. Item 55 was a delete and further amend. This is House second reading amendment number 20 in the Supreme Court. This is $140,000 for a position, and the further amending on this is we took out the language that would require them to use this staff attorney to work in the area of federal compliance, and instead it's just a new staff attorney position, knowing that the courts will use it to do the federal compliance and then also augment their other needs within the court. Item 56 was adopted, House second reading amendment number 21 in the Supreme Court, and what this footnote does is just simply make sure the funding for those positions are ongoing. Item 57 was a delete and further amend, and it's really items 57, 58, and 59 are all connected. So items 57 and 58 were delete and further amend, and that is House second reading amendment number 23 and House third reading amendment number 10. And this is the $280,000 and 1 FTE for the purposes of managing charter schools, and then the language saying that that money is only available in the event that the money or the bill about charter schools passes in this session. And then item 59, which was Senate second reading number 13, was also the same funding for that $280,000 and 1 FTE. And so it was deleted because it was taken care of in items 57 and 58. And with that, that is page 4, and I would answer any questions if there are any on page 4. Thank you, members.
Any questions? Just so the appropriations folks know, I don't know about what everybody else gets, but you went well into page 5 on me. So I think you have a bigger page than we have. So any questions on what was gone over by Representative Walters? Not Representative Stith.
Mr. Speaker, thank you. So on page 5 of this large sheet, starting at item 60, as you may recall, the House had put in $109,000 to add an additional law enforcement position in the Gaming Commission. The Senate did not have that. We acquiesced to their position for that. Item 61, this is Wyoming's Tomorrow. We had $40 million in the budget, and that the other side had 0. We split the difference, and this conference report puts $20 million into Wyoming's Tomorrow. You may recall the Wyoming's Tomorrow Scholarship Fund was established a year ago with an initial funding of $10 million. So this 20 raises it to 30, but the statute says you can't really spend any of that money until you get to 50. So it's funded at 30 if we do this, which leads us to the next item, which is item 62. Here on our side, we had put in $2.5 million for a Wyoming's Tomorrow Scholarship expenditure account so they could get the program up and running yet this year. On the other side, during conference, that was cut in half to $1.25 million. You'll see that'll show up as a section 300, and it has all the same structure as Wyoming's Tomorrow Scholarship, but it's not called that because until the Wyoming's Tomorrow Scholarship gets to 50 million, we can't spend $1. So now the next several items, this is where all the big savings are, starting on 63 at the bottom of page 5, and then flip over to page 6. So page 6, item 64. I find this one is really stunning because what it does is at the bottom, and if you look to the bottom of item 64 here on page 6, when all the dust settles, the recommendation is to put $367,594,000 into the Common School Permanent Land Fund, so the school permanent fund. And then the same amount, 150 there on the left of general funds and 217 of other funds. So another $367,594,000. Again, the same amount goes into the permanent Wyoming Mineral Trust Fund. So collectively, that is $735 million that goes into the permanent funds. It's a stunning amount. Item 65, again, some of these is more of a technical one. Back on 64, you may wonder why on 64 it takes so many line items to get that done. And the bottom line reason that you have to have all of these different transfers to these different accounts is, for example, 2/3 of your property tax that you pay goes to pay for schools. Well, we're not allowed to just take property tax spent for schools and put it into permanent savings. We're not allowed to do that. So the workaround essentially is to take a combination of federal mineral royalties and other funds destined for the construction account and put that into the Common School Permanent Land Fund. So that's why line 64 looks so complicated. But the bottom line is $735 million going into permanent savings. At the bottom, lines paid, item 66, you remember we had this funny $160 million that we expect to get sort of paid back by the federal government. And on the other side, they'd put it all in the governor's office for special projects, federal energy matching projects for, say, a hydrogen hub or carbon sequestration. What the conference committee has done is said the governor can have $80 million for that, but the other $80 million will get split so that 75 of it, well, so that 75 of it goes into the permanent funds, and the other $5 million is reserved to fund the Wyoming State Shooting Complex, which is also the subject of Senate File 169. Moving on to the next page. Item 67. Here we have a lot of money, again, going into savings, but this time it's going into the reserve accounts. So the very top line item there, you see $274 million. That is going into the permanent Wyoming Mineral Trust Fund reserve account. So I think of it as the general reserves. And then the other number, $359 million, that's going into the Common School Permanent Land Fund reserve account. And you may recall, why are these numbers what they are? The whole design is these numbers are set so that if we do this, then those reserve accounts will have 5 times an annual spend on them. And doing that gives us the ability, or gives the state treasurer the ability to invest those reserve accounts to get a better return on investment. The rest of the page on page 7, well, I forgot to mention, on item 67, we also have smaller amounts 4.6 million that's going into the, I believe that one is the Hathaway, the Hathaway account, and 1.4 million going into the Higher Excellence and Higher Education account. And again, the reason the reserve accounts, and the reason those numbers are what they are, is it gets you to the 5 times the spending policy amount. Okay. After that, the remaining items on this page 7 through line 73, 68, 69, 70, 71, 72, and 73, those are all just conforming changes to make sure that all these savings work together. So again, between these 2 pages, as the good Vice Chairman of Appropriations mentioned earlier, when all the dust settles, you've got $1.4 billion going into savings, of which a little more than half is into the permanent funds.
Anybody have questions of Representative Stith? Nope. Representative Walters.
Okay, thank you, Mr. Speaker. We are on item 74. I'm not sure what page it is on the smaller printed sheets. On my large one, we're on page 7 of your sheets. Item 74, this is a delete and further amend, and it is connected to item 75, which is also a delete and further amend. So in item 74, it's Senate second reading amendment 15. In 75, it's House second reading amendment 25, and this is regarding school capital construction. And so the combined total, we end up spending $95 million for the commission to go forward and do various school capital construction projects. And then we carve out $5 million or use an additional $5 million for the state construction department to go partner with the various districts in terms of doing advanced planning studies. So once you find out if you have a condition or a capacity issue in your district, then the next step is really to do a most cost-effective remedy study, and that's where the state will use some of this money along with the district to go out and do those studies to figure out what is the best solution for the issue that has been identified. Now moving on to item 76, which was adopted. It's Senate second reading and number 16. This is in the section 300s on energy matching funds, and this is just a language addition, and it'll to include the processing and separation of lithium as a permissible use of the energy matching funds. Item 77 was deleted, which was Senate second reading number 47, and this again is in the section 300s, and the Senate had removed the language spending $5 million out of the $75 million for matching funds. And so we deleted that, and we'll go ahead and spend that $5 million. Moving on to item 78, it was adopted. House third reading number 37, and this is in the community colleges. It's a section 300, and it's $3.5 million for the community colleges. Item 79 was deleted. That's House second reading amendment number 52. This is for the unmet housing needs, so that was reduced in this amendment. Then we move on to item number 80, which was deleted and further amended. And this is House third reading amendment number 17. The House position was at $10 million, and this reduces that amount to $5 million. Moving on to item 81, this is delete and further amend. This is the one I mentioned earlier that is tied to item 54. And so the total amount here will be $5.5 million, with the first 2.695 million going to the Business Council for municipalities to preserve former facilities that have already received grant funding, and the remaining 2.7 is using the current statutory structure for general purposes of a community facility. Item 82 was deleted. This is Senate third reading amendment number 19, and this is in regards to Senate File 136. And in Senate File 136, it reduces the assessment rate from 9.5 to 8.5. This funding would have been used to make communities whole if that were to go into effect. Your local college districts, conservation districts, et cetera. And the committee's feeling was when that bill hits the floor, we would take care of the appropriations in that bill at that time, as opposed to trying to do what I would describe as a blanket coverage in the budget bill. And so we'll address that when that bill comes through the body. And then item number 33 was adopted, and this is House third reading number 45. Most likely this will not be used. This is a transfer in case we need more funding. And so the way I would describe this is the good co-chairman of the committee described, there's more spending in individual bills than there is in the actual budget bill. So if every single one of those outstanding House bills, Senate files that are still in the process were to pass and fully funded, then this item number 83 would maybe be used. But even if just half of those bills, or half of the amount in those bills were reduced or does not pass, then this would not be needed at all. And so it's really just completely a safety mechanism on our behalf. And so that was adopted, but most likely will not be used. So with that, any questions?
Does anybody have any questions? Representative Newsom, Chairman Newsom.
Are we allowed to go back to page 2?
I believe so.
Okay.
Go for it.
On our comparative positions sheet, for specifically to the state fair, it says under item 3 that $500,000 was the House and $500,000 was the Senate, and that the joint conference committee was $500,000. And yet on page 2, line 29, it takes that funding out, and I waited till the end to see if it somehow solved itself, because sometimes my hair gets on fire about something and then I find out 3 pages later that it's all fixed up, but I didn't find that this was all fixed up.
Representative Larson.
So, thank you, Mr. Chairman. And just to clarify, Madam Chairman, is the $500,000 that was going to come for advertising for the state fair out of the tourism account can be done, but we deleted the requirement of it in this budget bill. So they still have the ability to do it. We don't dictate that they do it, and that was a position. Yeah, it was a Senate position. We defeated it on the House. The Senate approved it, and then they agreed with our position in conference committee. And Mr. Chairman, again, I think it's really important. I think it's really important also to note that for the state fair this year, they had, and you're going to see this in the CapCon bill, and in here, but they came to us with a request to demo one of the buildings named after a great Eastern Shoshone chief for $474,000. Just really pleased with the way that director's taking the state fair and those facilities there. So we approved that, and then approved another $500,000 to further do some of the stuff that they are doing up there. And then we also approved an additional $500,000 that they didn't request to be used for matching funds to grow the trust fund.
Representative Strzok, do you have a question?
Yep.
Thank you.
Yep. And
Thank you, Speaker. Yeah, we just kind of need a little more clarity to that. Now, does that mean if they wanted that 500,000 in tourism, if something came up, they would go ahead and be able to get that, or it's totally gone? I guess, not quite sure on what that really meant. Thank you.
Representative Walters.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. We have to tag team this because we are on second reading speaking rules, so we can't speak a second time until everyone spoke for the first time. So I'll aid my good friend from the committee. So if you're looking at this summary sheet and you see about a third of the way down, it shows the state fair. That 500,000 on that page is the matching funds. That is not the advertising funds. And so the Senate and the House both had matching funds in there. So it is at that $500,000. Again, that's the matching funds component, not the advertising funds. The advertising funds were only approved on the other end of the building. They were not approved on this end of the building, which meant we would go one way, the other way, or meet somewhere in the middle. The Joint Conference Committee chose to eliminate all of those funds for the advertising piece. So those are off the table and will not be funded in this budget, the advertising piece. Now, that is not to say that the state fair could not go work with the Department of Tourism to work on something, because the Department of Tourism does have money in their budget to do advertising. That just is not dictated through this budget that they are required to do any of that. So I hope that clears up some of the confusion that's taking place there, where there's two different pots of 500,000. Again, what's shown here on this sheet is regarding the matching funds that builds the trust, or not really the trust account, but the permanent account for the state fair. That was not affected in the conference committee because that was already appropriated by both ends of the building. The advertising funds, again, are the ones I believe are in question. Advertising through the Department of Tourism was eliminated in the joint conference committee.
Are there any other questions? Representative Knapp?
Mr. Speaker, thank you. I don't mean to go backwards either, but on page 5, just a little more clarification on item 62. And I know that tomorrow's program was cut in half for that funding, but then we have this 1.25 million, and as I understand it, it's handled somewhat outside the tomorrow's program, and then it says is allowed expenditures on scholarships in fiscal year 2024, including a prohibition on reversion or transfer to the Wyoming Tomorrow's Endowment Corpus. Does that mean this entire 1.25 is slated to be used without going back into the corpus?
Representative Walters, or Representative Stith, why don't we go with you?
Mr. Speaker, that is correct, that this $1.25 million will be in the expenditure account and is slated to be used for funding actual scholarships to get the program up and going right away and is not scheduled to be reverted. But the good Vice Chairman of Appropriations may have a further clarification.
Representative Larson.
Close, but not quite. So the way the Wyoming's Tomorrow account was set up is it has to get up to 50 million. Then the revenue off from that goes into the income account. But there is as part of the statute, that nothing from the income account can be expended until it reaches 50 million. So this is, as we visited with our colleagues, we wanted to have, until we get up there, we wanted to be able to use some money for those scholarships for the community colleges. So it's in what, if you'll look there, it's not the Wyoming's Tomorrow, it's just a little different account that allows them to use it for the same purposes, but it's not coming out of that income account, but it can be used for the same purpose.
Any other questions? Any other questions? All right. Well, I would like to thank the Appropriations Committee for all their hard work for getting the budget out fast. I think they did an awesome job. So with that, we are voting on Joint Conference Committee Report number 1, or number 1 report to House Bill 1. A majority of the elected members is required to adopt the report. The chief clerk will please call the roll.
Allemand? Allred? Andrew? Angelos? Banks? Bear? Berger? Brown? Burkhart? Byron? Chadwick? Chestick? Klauston? Conrad? Crago? Davis? Eklund? Haroldson? Harshman? Heiner? Henderson? Hornock? Jennings? Knapp? Larson Lloyd? Larson JT? Lawley? Locke? Nyman? Newsom? Nicholas? Nemec? Northrup? Oakley? Obermuller? O'Hearn? Olson? Ottman? Pendergraft? Penn? Provenza? Rodriguez Williams? Sherwood? Singh? Slagle? Smith? Stith? Storer? Strock? Stivar? Tarver? Trujillo? Walters? Ward? Washut? Western? Winter? Winter? Wiley? Yin? Zwanitzer Dan? Zwanitzer Dave? Speaker Summers? Are there any changes? Are there any changes? Closing vote. Vote closed. 37 aye, 25 no.
By your vote, you have adopted Joint Conference Committee Report Number 1 on House Bill 1. We're at that order of business of request to concur with Senate amendments to House Bill. The first message for our consideration is message number 328 on House Bill 21, Chairman Eklund.
Mr. Speaker, I move message number 328 to House Bill 21. Body, this is the state lands use and land qualification requirements. The Senate added, if you look at your concurrence report, the Senate added on page 3, line 8, for the production of agricultural commodities. And I would ask for an aye vote on this. It doesn't substantially change the bill, probably helps it.
We are voting on the motion to concur with Senate amendments to House Bill 21. A majority of the elected members is required. The chief clerk will please call the roll.
Allemand? Allred? Andrew? Angelos? Banks? Bear? Berger? Brown? Burkhart? Byron? Chadwick? Chestick? Klauston? Conrad? Crago? Davis? Eklund? Haroldson? Harshman? Heiner? Henderson? Hornock? Jennings? Knapp? Larson Lloyd? Larson JT? Lawley? Locke? Nyman? Newsom? Nicholas? Nemec? Northrup? Oakley? Obermuller? O'Hearn? Olson? Ottman? Pendergraft? Penn? Provenza? Rodriguez Williams? Sherwood? Singh? Slagle? Smith? Stith? Storer, Strock, Stivar, Tarver, Trujillo, Walters, Ward, Washut, Western, Winter, Wiley, Yin, Zwaniter Dan, Zwaniter Dave, Speaker Summers.
Aye.
Are there any changes? Closing vote. Vote closed. 61 aye, 1 no.
By your vote, you have voted to concur with Senate amendments to House Bill 21. The next message for our consideration is message number 341 on House Bill 65, Chairman Harshman. 341.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I'd move message 341, concurrence request on House Bill 65. That's the 988 suicide prevention hotline. Members are cohorts down at the other end of the hall on the west end of the Capitol. Made a couple little changes. I think the one was simple. It corrected a statute reference error. The other was to encourage the Department of Health to raise money for this effort. And then the third one is actually a sunset of the program, and that's July 1st, 2028. So we don't want to sacrifice the good for the perfect. Doesn't need a sunset, but I don't think it's worth fighting about right now. I think we're probably 95% there. I think probably the 68th or 69th legislature will push it over and finish it, but appreciate everybody's work on this really important program. And I think we're starting to see the stats come in from just 1 year of work on this program, and really encouraged. So I think we're going to learn more as the years go on. So I'd ask for your aye vote on concurrence, and we'll move forward. So appreciate it. Thank you, Mr. Speaker.
We're voting on the motion to concur with Senate amendments to House Bill 65. A majority of elected members is required. Chief Clerk, please call the roll.
Allemand? Allred? Andrew? Angelos? Banks? Bear? Berger? Brown? Burkhart? Byron? Chadwick? Chestick? Klauston? Conrad? Prego? Davis? Eklund? Haroldson? Harshman? Heiner? Henderson? Hornock? Jennings? Knapp? Larson Lloyd? Larson JT? Lawley? Locke? Nyman? Newsom? Nicholas? Nicholas? Nemec? Northrup? Oakley? Obermueller? O'Hearn? Olson? Ottman? Pendergraft? Penn? Provenza? Rodriguez Williams? Sherwood? Singh? Slagle? Smith? Stith? Storer? Strock? Stivar? Tarver? Trujillo? Walters? Ward? Washut? Western? Winter? Wiley? Yin? Zwaniter Dan? Zwaniter Dave? Speaker Summers?
Aye.
Rodriguez Williams, will you please repeat? Aye. Are there any changes? Allemand? Aye to no. Further changes? Closing vote. Vote closed. 40 aye, 22 no.
By your vote, you have voted to concur with Senate amendments to House Bill 65. The next concurrence for our consideration is message number, this is just a second. All right, House conferees on Senate File 9 are Zwanitzer Dan, Representative Provenza, Larson Lloyd, Chair. So that's Zwanitzer Dan, Provenza, Larson Lloyd, Chair. Senate File 9. Mr. Majority Floor Leader, I think we're ready to do some general file.
Mr. Speaker, I move the House resolve itself into committee of the whole.
You have heard the motion. All those in favor say aye. All those opposed, no. Motion carries. Representative Hornock. Hey!
Committee of the Whole, please come to order. The first bill for our consideration is House Bill 32. Would the reading clerk please read the bill? Is that Senate file? I'm sorry, 32. Would the reading clerk please read the bill?
Senate File 32, sponsored by Judiciary, prohibiting drones over penal institutions, an act relating to crimes and offenses. Mr. Speaker, your Committee Number 1, Judiciary, to whom is referred Senate File 32 engrossed, prohibiting drones over penal institutions, respectfully report same back to the House with the recommendation that it do pass with the following amendments. Ayes, Representatives Chestick, Crago, Haroldson, Jennings, Nemec, Oakley, Provenza, Rodriguez-Williams, Washit. Representative Washit is chairman.
You have heard the reading of the bill. What is your pleasure, Chairman Washut?
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I move when the Committee of the Whole rises to report that it do so with the recommendation that Senate File 32 do pass, and I turn over the explanation to the good Deputy Sheriff.
Representative Nemec. Representative Harrelson.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. So I am not the good sheriff, nor do I claim to be. But we were under the impression that I was the one presenting this one, so we're going to move forward in that direction. And do you want to move the amendment, Mr. Chairman?
Chairman Washut.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Apologize for the disruption here. And I also move the Standing Committee Amendment Number 1 to this House bill.
Representative Harrelson.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. So what we have here today, we had two bills that we saw in our committee in regards to drones, and this is the second of them. The first one didn't have the best lifespan. But this one here is a conversation that came forward that we've had a situation and an issue with on two different accounts here in the state of drones dropping contraband inside of our penal institutions. And so this was brought by our department that oversees correction in the state to basically just put some borders around our penal institutions and the property surrounding them, stating that you're not allowed to fly a drone over these institutions. A couple things that they're concerned about, obviously, is drugs or weapons or any of that type of information, or just them using these devices to spy into these institutions. So with that, I will talk about the amendment and we'll move through the amendment. One of the things we were concerned about is in this bill, it talked about that you were not allowed to spy upon or anything of that nature inside of an institution, which we agree with. But what we didn't want to have is the unintended consequence that if you own property next to one of these institutions and you're out flying your drone in your backyard, and all of a sudden you are in trouble because somehow they claimed you were spying in. So we're putting this amendment in, and the amendment is page 3, line 19. After intentionally insert trespassing over or in a penal institution or on the grounds of a penal institution with an unmanned aircraft system. And so this is just saying that if you're on your property, you can fly your drone on your property. If you're on an adjacent property, you can fly that drone on that adjacent property. You just can't fly it over property owned by the state and or the actual facility of the institution. We had the department that oversees corrections say that they were fine with this. This is something we worked with them on. They're in committee and they were fine with this. So at this point in time, I would like to have discussion on the amendment and move this amendment. Mr. Chairman.
Any discussion on the amendment? Seeing none and the question being called, all those in favor of the Standing Committee amendment, please say aye. Aye. Those opposed, no. That amendment has passed. We are back on the bill. Representative Harrelson.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. So pretty straightforward. We don't mind you flying your drone, just don't fly it over the jails.
Representative Chestic, or Conrad. Thank you.
Mr. Chairman, thank you. Question to the good bringer of the bill. It does articulate more specifically, it's over the grounds. Has there ever been consideration, this is a friendly suggestion or amendment, potentially, there's a certain space, a no-fly zone, maybe 500 feet, half mile, 1 mile from the penitentiary? Thank you.
Representative Provenza.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. So that was a discussion. We talked a lot about it during the interim. There are rules around airspace that essentially it lies under the rule of the United States government. So states can't dictate what we do in flight space because of the the body that oversees airplanes and stuff that flies. Not that one. But essentially there were concerns about violating that issue. So we had to kind of keep it in the space that we could have. And there was also a lot of discussion this interim about airspace in regards to trespassing that we certainly were trying very hard to stay away from.
Representative Harrelson.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. One other real quick thing on that. The federal establishments, this is the verbiage that they use for those, as far as that's how they're handling those. And so on the federal level, that organization we just talked about, or that agency we just talked about, they did oversee federal institutions, but they did not speak into state institutions. And so we're just covering the state institutions. And seeing no one else at the mic, with that, I call for the question.
Question being called. All those in favor of Chairman Washett's motion that when the Committee of the Whole rise and report, it does so with the recommendation that Senate File 32 do pass. All those in favor say aye. Aye. Those opposed, no. The ayes have it. Next bill for our consideration is Senate File 61. Would reading clerk Please read the bill.
Senate File 61, sponsored by Management Council, Legislator per diem, an act relating to per diem rates. Mr. Speaker, your committee number 2 appropriations, to whom is referred Senate File 61 engrossed, Legislator per diem, respectfully report, same back to the House with the recommendation that it do pass. Originally, this bill was to House Subcommittee Revenue 3, to whom was referred Senate File 61 engrossed to Legislator per diem. Respectful report, same back to the House with a recommendation to do pass. Representatives, ayes. Representatives Byron, Harshman, Northrup, Oakley, Storer, Zwanitzer. Noes. Representatives Bear, Locke, Strzok. It was then re-referred to Committee number 2 Appropriations, to whom was respectful reports back, same back to the House with a recommendation that it do pass. Ayes. Representatives Henderson, Larson, Nicholas, Sherwood, Stith, Walters, Zwanitzer. Representative Nicholas, Chairman.
You've heard the reading of the bill. What is your pleasure, Chairman Harshman?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I move that when the committee of the whole rises to report, it do so with the recommendation that Senate File 61 do pass. And I turn the explanation of the bill over to the good Speaker of the House.
Speaker Summers.
Mr. Chairman, thank you. Ladies and gentlemen, I bring you Senate File 61 and ask for your favorable consideration. So this comes out of Management Council during the interim, when we looked at several ways of trying to bring up, basically bring the legislative, we looked at legislative salaries, we looked at per diem, we looked at our quarterly extra money for constituents allowance. So we looked at a lot of different things to decide if we should bring anything forward because there hasn't been anything brought forward in a long time. And so this is one of those. And so legislative per diem. So if you go into the bill, just to start right into it, we go into 28.5101 subsection B, and the changes are the per diem amount to be received for each member of the legislature for expenses shall be, and you'll see that stricken out is $109 per day, and placed into it is equal to an amount to be determined on July 1st of each year by the state auditor that is equal to the most recent per diem rates established by the United States General Services Administration for locations within Wyoming. So this is the federal per diem. And you'll also notice in section 2 that there's $125,000 appropriated from the general fund to the Legislative Service Office for per diem and for legislators. And there is $75,000 appropriated to the state auditor's office for supplementing the per diem of all the different state boards and commissions. And so just to give you an idea, a few ideas about this bill requires the state auditor annually to set the per diem rate for legislators and all boards and commissions, statutorily tied to legislator per diem to the Federal General Service Administration's per diem rate for locations in Wyoming. This is very similar to the manner in which mileage reimbursement is determined for legislators under 28.5101D. Legislative per diem was last increased in 2008 from $85 a day to $109 a day. It will provide location rates in Wyoming, which means currently higher per diem for meetings held in Teton, Sublette, or Park counties. There are 52 boards and commissions with their per diem statutorily tied to legislator per diem amounts. The vast majority of the members of those boards and commissions serve without any other compensation. And we last had a bill on this in 2019 to increase per diem. It passed both bodies and failed to get by the chief executive due to an amendment that came on that was based around this area, around the Capitol. You know, and I just want to say, I guess the final thing before I get into my heartfelt pitch, I guess, is this act is effective July 1st, 2023. And I just wanted to say, I think we all recognize that that our per diem has increased substantially out there. If you look at hotel rates, if you look at what meals cost, I think it's time we raise this. I think this is a good route to go. And it really ties it to the federal rate. It ties it to what I believe the agencies and state government currently have. And I think it's long overdue. And so I would stand for any questions.
Any discussion on the bill? Question being called, seeing no one move to the mic. All those in favor of Chairman Harshman's motion that when the Committee of the Whole rises to report, they do so with the recommendation that Senate File 61 do pass. Those in favor, please say aye. Aye. Those opposed, no. No. The ayes have it. Next bill for our Senate File 61 has passed the Committee of the Whole. Next bill for our consideration is Senate File 102. Would the reading clerk please read the bill?
Senate File 102, sponsored by Senator Salazar. Food Freedom Act amendments, an act relating to marketing homemade foods. Mr. Speaker, your committee number 5, Agriculture, State and Public Lands and Water Resources, to whom is referred Senate File 102 engrossed, Food Freedom Act amendments, respectfully report, same back to the House with the recommendation that do pass with the following amendments. Ayes, Representatives Alaman, Allred, Banks, Conrad, Crago, Davis, Eklund, Slagle, Winter. Representative Eklund, Chairman.
You've heard the reading of the bill. What is your pleasure, Chairman Eklund?
Mr. Chairman, I move that when the Committee of the Whole rises to report, it do so with the recommendation that Senate File 102 do pass. There is a standing committee amendment. I will move standing committee amendment number 1 to Senate File 102, and I'll turn over the explanation to our good speaker from the headwaters of the Green River.
Speaker Summers.
Mr. Chairman, thank you. And ladies and gentlemen, I bring you Senate File 102 and ask for your favorable consideration. And Mr. Chairman, with your acceptance, I will discuss the bill and I will bring in the amendment as I go. And then the first thing we can do after I do that explanation is take up that amendment, if that works for you, Mr. Chairman.
Proceed.
Thank you. So, ladies and gentlemen, I've always wanted to do a food freedom bill on the floor. And so what I call this breakfast freedom, right? Because if you look in the bill, what we're really doing is we're doing milk and egg freedom. And so what this bill does, and the gist of this bill, is that there are areas of the state that want to sell milk, and they want to sell milk in a venue that's not in a grocery store, but it's in kind of a farmer's market or an area that is similar to that. And so there was some difficulty getting that language done with the Department of Agriculture, and so it was decided the best way to do is to come in here and try to fix this problem statutorily. And so if you look on page 1, we go on to page 2, and we go into definitions. And so in definitions 1149-102, this is in the Food Freedom Act, we go into subsection 12. Designated agent means, and then I'm going to work in the amendment here, and so I'm going to just bring in the language of the amendment. So the designated agent means a person or consignment model market or food freedom store designated by the producer to facilitate to facilitate producer to consumer transactions, including transport, storage, and delivery of food or drink products. A designated agent shall be named in writing by the producer and shall not take ownership of any food or drink product. So you can see this is part of that amendment. It originally said in the bill, designated agent means a person employed. We're going for or consignment model market or food freedom store designated. And then if you go on into the new Romanet 13, and we go on down and we amend, and then there's just a reference to the site above. And then we go into current statute, and we amend 1149-103 in the Wyoming Food Freedom Act, and we go into transactions that, under this act shall, Romanet I under subsection C, be directly between producer and the informed end consumer as except otherwise provided by this act. And then the new language is, a producer may utilize, which is a new word within that amendment, a designated agent, and then we strike the next line on page 3. So I'm going to give you the new language as it would read from the amendment. A producer may utilize a designated agent to facilitate a transaction. Just facilitate a transaction. The seller of eggs, dairy products or homemade food, so this is where dairy products are brought in, produced consisting of non-potentially hazardous food may be by the producer of the item. And then instead of an agent, it's a designated agent. And then if we go on down to that, about line 9, you'll see dairy products is added in again with eggs. And then on line 10, you'll see, or a designated agent of the producer is added at the end of line 10 as part of that amendment. And this amendment was just cleanup from the good folks that want to do this and from our agency. And then you can really see on pages 12 through 16 where we're just including eggs and dairy products. And then if you go on to the bottom of page 3, you see the safeguard new language. Homemade or uninspected food shall not be served or utilized as an ingredient in a commercial food establishment, onto page 4. And then you'll just see the rest of page 4 is conforming amendments, conforming language. And then on to page 5, towards the bottom of the page, the new language, and this is the crux of the biscuit, the Department of Agriculture shall not promulgate any standard for food or health inspection that is applicable to this act that is more stringent than a standard established by the United States Department of Agriculture. So the idea here is to get back right to what only the feds require and no more than the feds require. And hopefully we can get that milk sold in that good county number 10. So with that, Mr. Chairman, I would stand for any questions.
Representative Banks.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Just real quick, I just want to say this is a great bill. We worked in the committee. We heard testimony from local producers who really want to take advantage of this. It gets the state of Wyoming closer to where we want to be in food freedom. And so I just encourage and I vote on this bill. Thanks.
Mr. Speaker, I believe that, I'm not sure if you have moved the standing committee amendment.
The standing committee, Mr. Chairman, the standing committee amendment was moved, and the first vote ought to be on the standing committee amendment, number 1.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. The motion having been made, question being called on standing committee amendment, number 1 to House Bill Senate File 102. Those in favor of the standing committee amendment, say aye. Aye. Opposed, no. Standing committee amendment is adopted. We are back on the bill. Question being called. All those in favor of Chairman Eklund's motion that when the committee of the whole rises to report, it does so with the recommendation that Senate File 102 do pass. All those in favor say aye. Aye. Those opposed, no. The ayes have it. Senate File 102 has passed the committee of the whole. The next bill for our consideration is Senate File 65. The reading clerk will read the bill.
Senate File 65, sponsored by Senator Baldwin. Compensation of local registrars, repeal. An act relating to vital records. Mr. Speaker, your committee number 10, Labor, Health, and Social Services, to whom was referred Senate File 65, compensation of local registrars, repeal. Respectfully report, same back to the House with the recommendation that it do pass. Ayes, Representatives Chadwick, Clauston, Hornock, O'Hearn, Penn, Trujillo, Ward, Yin, Zwanitzer. Representative Zwanitzer, Chairman.
You've heard the reading of the bill. What is your pleasure, Chairman Zwanitzer?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I move in the Committee of the Whole rise to report to do so with the recommendation that Senate File 65 do pass. There are no standing committee amendments, and I would turn it over to the good Chairman of Judiciary.
Chairman Washup.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. This is a super simple bill. We're repealing archaic language that has been on the books for quite a while, but is no longer utilized by our registrars. So we're just repealing and changing the language to get things up and current. Other than that, it doesn't do anything to the existing law, and I encourage you to vote aye.
Any further discussion on the amendment? Question being called. All those in favor of Standing Committee Amendment number 1 to okay. Question being called on the bill. All those in favor that when the Committee of the Whole rise to report, it does so with the recommendation that Senate File 65 do pass. Those in favor say aye. Aye. Those opposed, no. The ayes have it. Senate File 65 has passed the Committee of the Whole. The next bill for our consideration is Senate File 66. The reading clerk will read the bill.
Senate File 66, sponsored by Appropriations, School Capital Construction Funding, an act relating to school finance accounts. Mr. Speaker, your committee number 2, Appropriations, to whom is referred Senate File 66, School Capital Construction Funding, respectfully report same back to the House with the recommendation that do pass with the following amendments. Ayes, Representatives Henderson, Larson, Nicholas, Sherwood, Stith, Walters, Zwanitzer. Representative Nicholas, Chairman.
You've heard the reading of the bill. What is your pleasure, Chairman Nicholas?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I move the committee whole rise and report. It does so with a recommendation that Senate File 66 do pass. And I will turn the explanation of the bill and the amendment over to the good representative from Natrona County.
Representative Walters.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Senate File 66 is the bill before us. And what this does is it consolidates all of the accounts on the school capital construction side. And so really your fiscal note describes it the best. I can walk through the bill, but I think I'll just abbreviate it by going to the fiscal note. And so the first thing it does is the school lands mineral royalties account and the school major maintenance sub-account both are removed, and both of those counts move into the school foundation program account. Additionally, the school capital construction account moves into the school foundation program account. And then in the bill prior to the amendment, the 0.45% of SIPA that goes to school capital construction would then, that flow would be removed. So I'll move to the amendment, and what we do in the amendment is we keep that 0.45% of SIPA flowing to the school foundation program account. And that's just to make sure there's a good steady flow of funding into the school system, the K-12 school system. So the 0.45 stays in place, but all of the accounts are consolidated into the school foundation program account. And that's what Senate File 66 does. If there's any questions, I'd be happy to answer them.
Any discussion on the amendment? Seeing no discussion on the amendment, the question being called, you have heard the motion on the Standing Committee Amendment number 1. Those in favor, please say aye. Aye. Those opposed, no. That amendment is adopted. We are back on the bill. Question being called on the bill. All those in favor of Chairman Nicholas's motion that when the Committee of the Whole rises to report, it does so with the recommendation that Senate File 66 do pass. All those in favor say aye. Those opposed, no. The ayes have it. Senate File 66 has passed the Committee of the Whole. The next bill for our consideration is Senate File 178. The reading clerk will read the bill.
Senate File 178, sponsored by Senator Boner. Mountain lion pursuit seasons, an act relating to game and fish. Mr. Speaker, your committee number 6, Travel, Recreation, Wildlife, and Cultural Resources, to whom is referred Senate File 178 engrossed, Mountain lion pursuit seasons, respectfully report same back to the House with the recommendation that do pass with the following amendments. Ayes, Representatives Angelos, Burkhart, Byron, Larson, Newsom, Singh, Storer, Western, Winter. Representative Western, Vice Chairman.
Chairman Newsom.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I move when the Committee of the Whole rises to report that it does so with the recommendation that Senate File 178 do pass. And I turn over the presentation of the bill and the amendments to my friend from House District 4.
Representative Harrelson.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. So before us today, we have kind of an interesting, fun bill, if you want to call it that. 178 Mountain Lion Pursuit Season was born out of kind of a necessity, I guess even a loophole, if we want to call it that, in how our mountain lion hunting seasons work. So currently how it works is a majority of all mountain lion hunting in the state of Wyoming is done with the use of dogs. We run dogs, we catch a fresh track, and we run mountain lion. And the mountain lion is treed and then harvested or released pending gender, quota, all of those factors. Well, the issue we have are these individuals that have these dogs need to do a large amount of training with these dogs to get them ready to pursue mountain lion. And so a lot of the times they're outfitting this, they're doing hunts, they're going into these areas. Well, the problem is the only way you can pursue mountain lion is with a current license in an open area. So obviously when a certain number of mountain lions are harvested in an area, we shut the area down and we make it where you can't, you no longer can hunt in that area. Well, what we're struggling with and what the hunters are struggling with is the fact that they get new dogs, and how do you train those new dogs on how to actually do the pursuit and hunt. So this bill would just open up the opportunity for individuals that own pursuit dogs, these mountain lion hunting dogs, to actually get a opportunity to go out just for training purposes. They're not hunting, they're not going to harvest, they're just going to train their dogs in the field running the dogs for mountain lions. So this opens up that training opportunity for our mountain lion pursuit season. So it's different than the actual harvest season, it's a pursuit season. So that's the bill. And going to the amendment, there's actually two. The one's yours. I'm going to do the first one, which was the standing committee amendment, and that is simply on page 2, line 3, delete 2 and insert may. It was a cleanup. I'm going to get to that real quick.
Representative Harrelson, please move the amendment to the bill.
It was not. Okay, I can definitely do that. At this point in time, I move standing committee amendment number 1 to Senate File 178 and ask for your favorable consideration and ask for your no vote on standing committee 1. Okay, I'm sorry. At this point, I do move standing committee amendment number 1 to Senate File 178 and ask for your no vote. The standing committee of the whole amendment will address this and take care of this, and that is the good representative's amendment that's coming up next. So at this point in time, I would call for the question on standing committee amendment number 1.
Any discussion on the amendment? Seeing none, question being called. All those in favor of Standing Committee Amendment number 1 to House Bill 178? Those in favor, please say aye. Opposed, no?
No.
That amendment has failed. We are back on the bill. Representative Chairman Newsom.
Thank you. So I move Standing Committee Amendment number 1 to House Bill 178. This is the corrected language that we wanted.
Chairman Newsom, we just had Standing Committee Amendment number 1.
I'm sorry, Committee of the Whole Amendment number 1. And this is the language that we actually wanted. We kind of did that first amendment on the fly, and it kind of didn't get to the proper wording. So I would suggest that you vote yes on this particular amendment. Thank you.
Give us a second up here. Question being called on the Committee of the Whole Amendment number 1. All those in favor of Committee of the Whole Amendment number 1, please say aye. Opposed, no? That amendment has been adopted. We are back on the bill. Representative Harrelson.
Thank you very much. So again, just really simple. We're creating a pursuit season, an opportunity for these individuals to go out, train their dogs, to get in the field, and this wouldn't get in the way of that. The other thing that this actually is, these individuals are holding open areas so they can continue to do this, and they're not harvesting the numbers they normally would. So this actually is something that would help our Fish and Wildlife Service in the state to get a more accurate harvest numbers in these areas. So I believe that this would be an opportunity. This would be an opportunity to not only help with that conservation aspect, but also help with the training aspect. And with that, we got people standing at mics, so I'll go for questions.
Representative Larson.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. So I did vote for this in committee, but I've recently been enlightened with more information. So my question is, how can you guarantee, for one, that the dogs will be able to be pulled off the cats? I mean, what if the dogs just go for it and kill a cat or harass it or whatever? And I mean, if it was any other type of animal, we'd be concerned about this. We'd be saying that's harassment of an animal, and it's out of season especially. So just a question on that.
Chairman Brown.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I guess my biggest question is, when I look at this, I guess right now we don't have a pursuit season, but when we're looking at this, we're now going to create a pursuit only season. So my question is, do we have, where we have the pursuit season, they can't go kill, and I noticed that we used our lovely words on page 2, line 23, knowingly kills a mountain lion. I will spare the Committee of the Whole the discussion of knowingly killing a mountain lion and what that would look like now, but I just want to ask, I guess maybe I'm not familiar with this particular species and how they handle everything, but is this going to line up right up against the hunting season of the pursuit season? So the hunter will be able to find out where this lion's potentially at the day before, and now he's going to come in and the very next day be able to find out exactly where that cat was at. And to the other question that was brought forward, I think the discussion on whether or not we're going to have $10,000 or 30 days in the dog pound, if you get put away for whatever that case may be, I just, if I could get a couple of those squared away, a couple of those questions, it would be really helpful for me. Yeah.
Representative Harrelson.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. So to start out, what would happen if the dogs were to get to the cat and kill the cat? A couple things you need to realize. In my lifetime and my experience with this, I've never seen that happen in any way, shape, or form. The reality is your cat might get your dogs, but your dogs very seldom ever get your cat. And so what the idea is, the cats they go up a tree. That's pretty much where it's at. If you guys, and I don't know if it's sent, but I did email a video, maybe you've already watched it, that I sent to you guys. That's us training dogs. So this is the concept. Obviously, in that case, we were carrying a tag with no intention to fill that tag. And this would open it up. The second question is, what about are we gonna line these right up next to each other? So the amendment that you guys passed gave the ability for our Fish and Wildlife Service in the state to promulgate rules and to make seasons and to set all that up. So I would assume they won't do that. That would be my guess. The other thing you need to understand is this. I don't know if any of you guys have stray cats in your neighborhood, but the cat that was out on the back porch might be on the neighbor's back porch in 30 seconds. And just multiply it times 10 and you found what these cats can do. So it's not, you might know where it was yesterday, but it won't be there today. That's just the reality of how these cats work. So I think that answered the two questions that came forward, and I'll answer more if we need to.
Representative Walters.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Really have some concern with this bill. To just train your dogs, there's lots of other predatory species that are out there that can be used. I know you can use the ones that have the glasses that look like they're wearing glasses and stripes down their backs and big bushy tails. And, you can use a lot of different species. I don't believe a lot of people use their waterfowl dogs. They don't go out and shoot waterfowl just to help train them. They wait until the season, and in between the seasons, they use some sort of a dummy type item. To the point of the dog's not getting the cat, I think if these seasons are when those cats are having their offspring, a dog taking down a kitten would have no trouble without it doing much damage to the dog. But my biggest concern is that you would potentially never let these cats have any reprieve. You would hunt them, then you would have pursuit seasons, and those pursuit seasons could overlap with the other wildlife and that are having their offspring in the spring and early summer of the year. So now you're putting more pressure on that habitat by running these hounds through these various habitat areas just for the training purposes. I think, as I said, I think there's other species that can be used for the training, if that's what we're looking for, to train these hounds. And by just having a pursuit season to train your dogs, I just don't see that it's necessary. So I'd be on and against the bill. I do appreciate the idea, but I think there's many other mechanisms to train the dogs and leave our wildlife, let them have a little bit of reprieve throughout the year.
Representative Larson.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. So I guess my next concern would be, okay, it's not happening. They're not getting to the cat, but is it causing undue stress in a time where they need to be relaxed and be able to carry babies? That's my question. And we have problems with hunters going out and shooting at wildlife and stuff like that. We have those problems, but I mean, I'd argue this is just the same as that. So,
Representative Pendergraft.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. On and for the bill. One of the problems we have with certain species of wildlife that are never harassed, and I would cite the grizzly bear, for example, is that they lose their fear of humans, and that's actually a bad thing. Yes, we train the dogs, but we also tend to train the cats, and we keep them wary, and I believe we're doing them a favor by harassing them a little bit, and we're certainly, if you develop and instill a little bit of fear of humans in these animals, it keeps them out of our backyards and out of our children's playgrounds. I think it's a great idea.
Representative Haroldson.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. So I think let's bring this back into a concept and a focus for a second here. A full-grown male cat will harvest or will kill a deer a week. In a time when our mule deer population is on a decline, in a time where we're seeing these struggles, predominant source of food for these animals are deer and elk. And so not that saying they don't hunt other species, but that's predominant. So you have to understand that 52 deer a year per cat. What we're realizing and seeing is because they're running these dogs and hunting, they're not actually harvesting the quota numbers in these areas. They're holding the quota numbers open for the purpose to train their dogs. And so this is something that the hunters have come forward and asked for. The dog owners and runners have come forward, and also our different organizations that are dealing with the management of these different animals and species, because it's going to help in our Fish and Wildlife Service as they actually manage the numbers of these species and that type of stuff. So when we talk about running these animals, it's not like we're stressing a winter range unit of deer or elk where, man, if we run them during that time, they may not make it through the winter. Cats are prevalent. They're not, that's not the issue. I don't think I've ever heard of or seen of a mountain lion starving itself to death or something of that nature. And to the prior comment, there's definite scent pattern for lion that we do not find with coons or other animals. And so predominantly lion dogs are trained on lions.
Chairman Brown.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. So I think, and I appreciate the good explanation on this, and I was referred back to the Standing Committee amendment and then to the Committee of the Whole amendment, which is actually the one that we were told we really wanted. And so when I went and looked at the Committee of the Whole amendment and I actually placed it into the bill, I'm actually more concerned than I was to begin with. And that's because the bill now reads to consider establishing and regulating. And let me put that into context here. It says that the commission is directed and empowered to consider establishing and regulating. I'm not sure what consideration and whether we need to put consideration into the green books. We either tell the commission to do something or we tell them not to do it. And so now we're giving this consideration. Now, I don't know where you guys are from, but to me, we've got a lot of cats around here. I'm talking to the majority floor leader back here, and it's 57 cats that are being killed. And actually what I'm hearing is this is actually deer being killed. This is actually training the cats to be more prolific at getting away. And they're getting smarter with this if we put them into this opportunity. So I'm not sure that I think that this is actually the way that we want to go with this. To me, I'm really frustrated with the idea that we want to consider establishing something. It's not really where I want to go with this. I want to be directive, and if this bill makes it through, I know I'll be bringing a second reading amendment to try to fix up this language a little bit better. But right now, I can't support it.
Representative Stivar.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. On for the bill. I got a friend that does this in the state south of us, and he's called out with his animals to chase off the mountain lions that are in the populated areas, get them back where they belong. There's a lot of possibilities with this, so on and for.
Representative Western.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I rise in support of this bill, and I think there's some good points that have been brought up or things to take into consideration. For example, could this lead to undue pressure on, our mule deer herds, our elk herds during the wintertime when they're at their most vulnerable? Initially, I had those considerations as well, but if you kind of look at the way it is, the bill is worded, it gives that authority to the commission. And so the way the commission sets these types of seasons, these types of dates, all that kind of stuff, they take a lot of testimony and do a lot of consultation with their biologists. So if they feel that there is a concern in a certain area, that's something they can take into consideration and limit that season to ensure that they are not going to be exposed, or that those herds will be exposed to this practice. The reality is all predators need to be managed. Mountain lions are a big part of what is putting pressure, predation pressure on our mule deer herds. The reality is these houndsmen across the state need to keep these dogs trained up. And so that's one of the big considerations that we heard in committee. They came forward and testified, and that's why we're asking for this to be here in the first place. We already have this concept with fish, catch and release. This is conceptually the exact same thing. Again, I think to the gentleman from the capital city, the process for setting these by the commission is a pretty lengthy and involved process. It's not expedited. There's a lot of these factors that are already taken into consideration, and it's a process that they've done a lot with other species as well. So I hope that provides a little bit of explanation. Please support the bill.
Representative Davis.
Mr. Chairman, yes, back to the good representative there. These areas will probably be considered, but not all areas will be used. So the other part of this is that these are hunters and sportsmen. They're not going to sabotage their own cash cow. These lions are what they hunt and get money for. So do you think they're going to go out there and run them to the point that this becomes an issue? I highly doubt it. So I'm for the bill.
Representative Sherwood.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. So anybody who knows me knows that I love a dog that has a job. But I do have a question about the fiscal impact of this bill. So there is no fiscal note, but we do have the creation of a special license. So I'm curious about how that might be set up, or if our agency suggested what the fiscal impact of that might be. And then on the back end, wondering what the impact to our enforcers' time and resources might be. Thank you.
Representative Warnock.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. So I am on and in favor of this bill. I live in a unique situation where actually just a couple of weeks ago, after the snow, there were some cat tracks wandering right through my front yard, right up the stairs beside my house. That happens at my house quite a bit. So I'm in a unique situation, and the guy that lives over the hill from me loves to hunt mountain lions. And so he talked to me about this bill. He raises dogs specifically for this. And he said, in this past year here in this county, the number of, it's not like deer hunting season, like was said before. So with mountain lions, you have to call the Game and Fish and say, hey, have enough lions been killed? Sorry, the department. So there's a certain block of time, it's about 2 months long, that you can hunt these mountain lions in the state. And depending on the area, depending on how many lions get killed during the season, because you have to report the lion kill. So the commission knows exactly how many lions are being killed all the time. So the commission limits the number of lions that can be killed in a certain area. This past year, our 2-month season was over in 15 days because they said, enough lions have been killed, it's over. So now for the guy that lives over the hill from me, who raises dogs specifically for this every year, he said, 2 weeks, feeding my dogs all year long for 2 weeks of a season is not very long. So he wants the opportunity to take his dogs out and to have them chase lions during this time period to it's like exercising your dog, it's training your dog. Now, when it comes to lions, typically they are always treed. And so a lion climbs up a tree, you call off the dogs, you take them home. So that's what's going to happen, and the lion's not going to be harmed except get them a little exercise. But I would much prefer to have the dogs running around than the lions around my house, frankly. So anyway, I think this is a good bill. This allows those people and to work these dogs additionally, not just for whatever the limited season may be that they could have. So I, on and in favor of this bill. Thanks.
Representative Winter.
Yes, thank you, Mr. Chairman. We should all remember that these cats are predators. And I think we've all heard of stories where people out jogging or hiking or whatever have been stalked by these lions. And so the answer is to train these cats that they don't do that sort of thing. And this bill will allow that to happen. It'll provide several benefits to the hunters as well as the lion himself. They just need to understand that they don't fool around with human beings. So I hope you'll vote for this bill.
Representative Banks.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I just want to let the body know that this isn't a new idea. It's implemented now in a couple of states, and it's very popular and very successful. So it's not going to be an experiment. It's been implemented, and it's been very popular. And so I think that we can enjoy the benefits of it here as they do in other states. So urge a aye vote on this bill.
Majority Floor Leader Nyman.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Just to kind of maybe finish up a little bit, I deal with this every day. I am in an area in the Black Hills of Wyoming that is literally inundated with mountain lions. All of my family have shot lions. We just went and picked up a life-size mount my wife just shot this last winter. I mean, my sons, everybody. There's just lions everywhere in our country. And I'm kind of torn on this piece of legislation because I deal with the consequences of them. A average lion, and the good chairman said, they'll eat 57 white-tailed deer a year per lion. And that's a lot of deer. And an average male lion will travel up to 50 miles. So we'll see that same male lion on the ranch there about 4 times a year. The females stay pretty located. But I've been on hunts on our place right there with dogs that we literally have so many lions and so many fresh tracks in a canyon on a fresh snow, the dogs cannot follow a lion. There's just tracks like a spider web going every direction. And so there's a couple different points you want to remember as we think through this. We've learned that as we run those lions, especially the females, they learn how to manage dogs. So the more you run them, the more crafty and creative they get. And they learn to what we call tap a tree. And that's if that cat gets so close or those dogs get so close, they'll leave scent in a tree and they'll jump and tap it and keep going. Now, they don't tap it far enough that the dogs can't find it. That's their job. Make a wide loop, pick up the trail and go on if they can't get it. But we have rim rock, and they'll crawl down into a crevasse in the rim rock and they'll figure it out. We finally pull the dogs off, the cat's got go, she learns the next lesson, she does it again. And so my only concern in this legislation is that from my standpoint, I need as many cats controlled as possible because they absolutely impact my livelihood. They eat the deer that we let hunters come in. We've lost colts to them, horses, lambs. But a mountain lion will walk through a whole flock of newborn lambs to eat a foal on a mare. We've seen it happen on more than one occasion. And so lions are a major issue. And I'm trying to look, as I've listened to all this discussion, it's interesting at all the perspectives, but we need to think about this, and I would like to see this come on to a second reading because I don't want to train these cats to be so crafty that we can't kill them. And that's sometimes what we do when we allow folks to just run them year-round. We need to monitor them and we need to manage them because we have got a plentiful abundance of them. So it's kind of a catch-22. I don't know where I'm at on this right now. We need to control them, but I almost am concerned that over chasing could potentially make it even more difficult for us to control them when the season's on. And we need to control these animals. So just something to consider.
Representative Provenza.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. The consideration about white-tailed deer, I'm wondering if in committee there was any conversation about that, because white-tailed deer, to best of my understanding, are an invasive species. And so I don't know that it's necessarily a bad thing that we've got cats running around eating them. And then is there any scientific evidence of this in terms of what the outcomes are? Are other states doing this? Has it been studied? I genuinely want to know. And then are we sure that the dogs aren't just sick of chasing cats? It's an ongoing problem that we've had since the beginning of time. So maybe they're just sick of it. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Majority Floor Leader Nyman.
I can't
know where
let that
this
one
is
go.
going.
Dogs never get tired of chasing cats. It's as natural as peas and carrots. So just so you know, they never grow tired of cats.
Are you ready for the question? Question being called. All those in favor of Chairman Newsom's motion that when the Committee of the Whole rises to report, it does so with the recommendation that Senate File 178 do pass. All those in favor say aye. Those opposed, no. The ayes have it. Senate File 178 has passed the division being called. All those in favor, please stand. Those opposed, please stand. More than 45. Less than 45. The cat's still chasing his tail. Senate File 178 has passed the Committee of the Whole. The next bill for our consideration is Senate File 95. The reading clerk will please read the bill.
Senate File 95, sponsored by Senator Ellis. Moon Landing Day, an act relating to legal time and holidays. Mr. Speaker, your Committee Number 9, Minerals, Business, and Economic Development, to whom is referred Senate File 95 engrossed, Moon Landing Day, respectfully reports same back to the House with the recommendation that it do pass with the following amendments. Ayes, Representatives Banks, Burkhart, Conrad, Heiner, Knapp, Larson, Lawley, Tarver, Western. Representative Burkhart, Chairman.
You have heard the reading of the bill. What is your pleasure, Chairman Burkhart?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I move that when the Committee of the Whole rise to report, it do so with a recommendation that Senate File 95 do pass. I also move adoption of the Standing Committee amendment and turn both the explanation of the bill and the amendment over to the good representative and co-sponsor on the bill from District 32.
Representative Clouston.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. So when our good senator from the capital city brought this to me, I thought, I'm not sure on this. And she said, give me some grace. And she said, what's the greatest thing this country's achieved in the last 50 years? And she said, we put a man on the moon when we didn't really have computers and brought him back. And I agreed with her. And she said, you know, your town in Gillette has a company that supplies equipment for NASA. They made the crawler for the space shuttle. They still make supplies. What she didn't know is that my mother-in-law's family, who homesteaded in Crook County, my wife had two uncles who worked on the Apollo project. And, you know, they talked about like the courage of the astronauts, the heartbreak when things failed, and what it was like to have a whole nation and a whole world watch you. You know, the nation watching and praying and being proud of this accomplishment and what these men did. This little bill here, and it's out of the world. I mean, it's a great bill. It's gained national attention. So the second man on the moon, Buzz Aldrin, has got a hold of us, and he's in favor of this. Oh, sorry. Oh, he is in the bill. There's another astronaut who's not in the bill, but he was the 10th man on the moon. He's got a hold of us, and he's in favor of this. We've had sculptors and organizers, fundraisers who want to come to Wyoming and commemorate this. So on July 20th, we're asking that the state recognize Moon Landing Day as a great achievement of this country. On the amendment, it's a committee amendment, and the chairman has asked me to remove it, and I agree. So I'm going to move Standing Committee Amendment number 1 to Senate File 95 and ask you to vote no on the amendment. If we're going to pass the bill, we need to say the state shall observe this, not may observe this. So can we move to the question on Standing Committee Amendment number 1?
Any discussion on Standing Committee Amendment, Chairman, or Majority Whip Western?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Assuming the moon landing did happen, what are the practical implications of the may to shall?
Representative Larson.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. So I was a no on the amendment in committee, and I think I might have been the only no amendment on the committee for this reason. I think changing the shall to may just makes the bill weak, and I think we need to keep the strength of this bill, and I urge you to vote no on the Standing Committee amendment to keep the shall language.
Minority Whip Yin.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. On the Standing Committee amendment, I think that one of the, I didn't watch testimony, so I was actually going to ask questions given that the good bringer said to vote no, but all of our holidays have the shall be appropriately considered. None of them say may be appropriately considered. So this just keeps it consistent with the rest of our holidays and statute.
Representative Davis.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. To the minority whip with the tail, I was there. It did happen.
Representative Nyman.
Just a curiosity, thank you, Mr. Chair. Just a curiosity, if you do a shall, and this is a state, would that create a state holiday, and what would be the, no creation of that? So, all right, very good, thank you.
Representative Knapp.
Mr. Chairman, thank you. On the amendment, we need to do one or the other, because in sub A, it says shall be appropriately observed by the state and local government. But in sub B, it says the governor may issue a proclamation. So they either need to be both shall or both may.
Chairman Zwaniter.
Thanks, Mr. Speaker. I'd just say may is a better choice if it falls on a weekend. And there are some instances in the statute with the same language, but many of them actually say like the second Friday of the month. So they do fall in the government working week, where this one having a specific date in statute might not. So I think we should go with the may language.
Chairman Harshman. Chairman Harshman.
Thank you. I'm against the amendment. I think the shall is appropriate. I think, this little bill comes across in it. But I think these things, what we say is important. I remember as a student teacher when the Challenger exploded, 1986. And I remember as a little kid going out back in 1968, looking up the sky, see if we could see these guys. But when you ask kids today, maybe some of you in this room even, what countries have put men on the moon? You'll ask, people will go, well, gosh, I guess I can't say the Russians. Or, gosh, they'll say another country. And they'll say another country. And I'll look at these guys and I'll go, oh no. We're the only people who put men on the moon. And I think just, it's not just kids. You ask Americans in general. It's kind of a thing we've almost, unless you live through it, have kind of forgotten. And, after the space shuttle was put away, we were flying on foreign rockets, and now we're on private. But this whole thing is an incredible period of American history. And So anyway, it's a little bill, but I think it's kind of a cool little bill. And so I vote no on the amendment, aye on the bill. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Are you ready for the question? Representative Pendergraph.
Thank you. I'll make this brief. Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I don't know how many of you have had a chance to go to Washington, D.C. and go to the Smithsonian and see the capsule that landed on the moon. I'm an Army mechanic. I was an Army mechanic, and I looked inside of that thing, and the same gauges that we used in a Deuce and a half, which failed a lot, are in that lunar lander. The men that got on board that thing with virtually not much more than slide rules and a lot of good guessing risked everything they had. I stand amazed at what they were able to accomplish at the time that they did. So for the bill.
Representative Clouston. Question being called. All those in favor of Standing Committee Amendment number 1, say aye. Opposed, no? Standing Committee Amendment has failed. We are back on the bill. Representative Larson.
Okay, so I have to do this. So this bill is out of this world, so let's reach for the stars and vote aye.
Chairman Washut, beat that.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Just something to consider. We're running 3 days right in a row here. We have the Independence Day, greatest day in our nation's history. We have Statehood Day, July 10th, and then we have this day, 1, 2, 3, right on top of each other. And I just worry that we start putting too many holidays, special days right on top of each other. Do we overshadow one of them? Do we fail to give proper regard to the others? My only concern.
Representative Clouston.
Thank you. I'll just wrap this up. And, nobody gets a day off with this. It's just recognizing this great achievement of our country and those men and women. And, when the senator brought it to me, I told her she had to include the importance of STEM. So science, technology, engineering, math. I mean, if you think what those men and women did back then to make this feat happen, it's really incredible. So again, I just ask for your support, and I will let you know, I think Wyoming will be first to commemorate this, and I bet every other state in the union follows us. Thank you.
Question being called. All those in favor of Chairman Burkhart's motion that when the Committee of the Whole rises to report, it does so with the recommendation that Senate File 95 do pass. All those in favor say aye. Aye. Those opposed, no. The ayes have it. Majority Floor Leader Nyman.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I move that the Committee of the Whole rise and report.
You've heard the motion. All those in favor say aye. Those opposed? That motion carries.
The reading clerk will read the Committee of the Whole report.
Mr. Speaker, your Committee of the Whole, having had under consideration bills on general file, begs leave to report as follows. Senate File 32, do pass amended. Senate File 61, do pass. Senate File 102, do pass amended. Senate File 65, do pass. Senate File 66, do pass amended. Senate File 178, do pass amended. Senate File 95, do pass. Representative Hornock, Chairman.
Chairman Hornock,
I move the adoption of the Committee of the Whole report.
you have heard the motion. All those in favor say aye. All those opposed, no. The motion carries. Congratulations, Representative Hornock. Messages from the Senate.
Message 342. Mr. Speaker, Senate File 9, Medicaid Coverage Licensed Pharmacists. The Senate failed to concur on House amendments to the bill listed above by the vote indicated. Ayes 6, noes 24, excused 1. Message 343. Mr. Speaker, the Senate appointed Senate conferees to meet with a like committee number 1 from the House on amendments to Senate File 9. The Senate conferees are Senator Baldwin, Chairman, Senator Barlow, Senator Beitman. Message 344. Mr. Speaker, the Senate did concur on House amendments to the bill listed below by the vote indicated. Senate File 68, prescriptive easement for water conveyances. Ayes 26, noes 4, excused 1. Message 345. Mr. Speaker, House Bill 96, transfer on death-dead insurance coverage. The House bill listed above passed on third reading in an amended form as follows by the vote indicated. Ayes 30, excused 1. The Senate respectfully asks the House to concur by adopting the listed amendments. Message 346. Mr. Speaker, the bill listed below passed the Senate on third reading by the vote indicated. House Bill 106, eminent domain wind energy collector systems. Ayes 18, noes 12, excused 1. Message 347. Mr. Speaker, the bill listed below passed the Senate on third reading by the vote indicated. House Bill 142, notice of annexation. Ayes 30, excused 1. Message 348. Mr. Speaker, the bill listed below passed the Senate on third reading by the vote indicated. House Bill 239, vehicle idling decriminalization. Ayes 30, excused 1. Message 350. Mr. Speaker, House Bill 7, underage marriage amendments. The House bill listed above passed on third reading in an amended form as follows by the vote indicated. Ayes 23, noes 7, excused 1. The Senate respectfully asks the House to concur by adopting the listed amendments. Message 351. Mr. Speaker, the bill listed below failed to pass the Senate third reading by the vote indicated. House Bill 213, energy production inventory exemption. Ayes 11, noes 19, excused 1. Message 352. Mr. Speaker, House Bill 41, lightweight trailers permanent registration. The Senate adopted the Joint Conference Committee Number 1 report on the bill listed above by the vote indicated. Ayes 28, noes 1, excused 2. Sincerely, Ellen Thompson, Senate Chief Clerk.
Reports from standing committees.
Senate Joint Resolution 2, sponsored by Senator Case, recognizing the service of Lester C. Hunt. A joint resolution recognizing the United States Senator and Wyoming Governor and Secretary of State Lester Callaway Hunt as a consummate model to public servants for his distinguished career, his commendable civility and courage, and his service to Wyoming and the United States of America. Mr. Speaker, your Committee Number 3 Revenue, to whom is referred Senate Joint Resolution 2 engrossed, recognizes the service of Lester C. Hunt. Respectfully report, same back to the House with the recommendation that it do pass. Ayes, Representatives Byron, Harshman, Northrup, Oakley, Storer, Zwanitzer. Noes, Representatives Bear, Locke, Strzok. Representative Harshman, Chairman. Senate Joint Resolution 5, sponsored by Senator Boner. Air Force 75th Anniversary, a joint resolution to recognize and congratulate the United States Air Force on the 75th anniversary of its founding. Mr. Speaker, your Committee Number 8, Transportation, Highways, and Military Affairs, to whom was referred Senate Joint Resolution 5, engrossed, Air Force 75th Anniversary, respectfully report, same back to the House with the recommendation that it do pass. Ayes, Representatives Berger, Brown, Nemec, Obermueller, O'Hearn, Pendergraft, Smith, Stivar, Wiley. Representative O'Hearn, Vice Chairman. Senate File 35, sponsored by Judiciary, School Crosswalks and Pedestrian Crossings Appropriation, an act relating to the administration of government. Mr. Speaker, your Committee Number 2 Appropriations, to whom was referred Senate File 35 engrossed, School Crosswalks and Pedestrian Crossings Appropriation, respectfully report, same back to the House with the recommendation that do pass with the following amendments. Ayes, Representatives Henderson, Nicholas, Sherwood, Stith, Walters, Swanitzer. Excused, Representative Larson. Representative Nicholas, Chairman. Senate File 53, sponsored by Transportation. Wyoming National Guard Medical Insurance Premiums, an act relating to Defense Forces and Affairs. Mr. Speaker, your committee number 8, Transportation, Highways, and Military Affairs, to whom was referred Senate File 53 engrossed, Wyoming National Guard Medical Insurance Premiums, respectfully report, same back to the House with the recommendation that it do pass. Ayes, Representatives Berger, Brown, Nemec, Obermueller, O'Hearn, Pendergraft, Smith, Wiley. Noes, Representative Stivar. Representative O'Hearn, Vice Chairman. Senate File 75, sponsored by Blockchain, Decentralized Autonomous Organizations Amendments, an act relating to corporations. Standing Committee Amendment, correct reading. Mr. Speaker, your committee number 7, Corporations, Elections, and Political Subdivisions, to whom is referred Senate File 75, Decentralized Autonomous Organizations Amendments. Respectfully report, same back to the House with the recommendation that it do pass. Ayes, Representatives Chadwick, Haroldson, Harshman, Knapp, Newsom, Olson, Ottman, Wiley, Yin. Representative Olson, Chairman. Senate File 76, sponsored by Blockchain, Wyoming Digital Asset Registration Act, an act relating to digital assets. Mr. Speaker, your committee number 2, Appropriations, to whom is referred Senate File 76 engrossed, Wyoming Digital Assets Registration Act. Respectfully report, same back to the House with the recommendation that do pass with the following amendments. Ayes, Representatives Henderson, Nicholas, Sherwood, Stith, Walters. Noes, Representative Zwanitzer. Excused, Representative Larson. Representative Nicholas, Chairman. Senate File 97, sponsored by Senator Hicks. Education Trust Fund Transfer, an act relating to the Wyoming Education Trust Fund. Mr. Speaker, your committee number 2, Appropriations, to whom is referred Senate File 97, Education Trust Fund Transfer. Respectfully report, same back to the House with the recommendation that it do pass with the following amendments. Ayes, Representatives Henderson, Larson, Nicholas, Sherwood, Stith, Walters, Swanitzer. Representative Nicholas, Chairman. Senate File 100, sponsored by Senator Barlow. Designation of spouses, revocation upon divorce or annulment. An act relating to wills and probate. Mr. Speaker, your committee number 3, Revenue, to whom is referred Senate File 100 engrossed. Designation of spouses, revocation upon divorce or annulment. Respectfully report, same back to the House with the recommendation that do pass with the following amendments. Ayes, Representatives Bear, Byron, Harshman, Locke, Northrop, Oakley, Storer, Strzok, Swanitzer. Representative Harshman, Chairman. Senate File 107, sponsored by Senator Hicks. Acquisition, exchange, and sale of trust lands, an act relating to state lands. Mr. Speaker, your committee number 5, Agriculture, State, and Public Lands and Water Resources, to whom is referred Senate File 107 engrossed. Acquisition, exchange, and sale of trust lands. Respectfully report, same back to the House with the recommendation that do pass with the following amendments. Ayes, Representatives Allred, Conrad, Davis, Eklund, Slagle. Noes, Representatives Alaman, Banks, Winter. Excused, Representative Crago. Representative Eklund, Chairman. Senate File 123, sponsored by Senator Boner. Military Dependents, School Choice, an act relating to education. Mr. Speaker, your committee number 8, Transportation, Highways, and Military Affairs, to whom is referred Senate File 123, Military Dependents, School Choice. Respectfully report, same back to the House with the recommendation that do pass with the following amendments. Ayes, Representatives Berger, Brown, Nemec, Obermueller, O'Hearn, Pendergraft, Smith, Stivar, Wiley. Representative O'Hearn, Vice Chairman. Senate File 128, sponsored by Senator Hicks. Transfer of state lands, exchange, an act relating to state lands. Mr. Speaker, your committee number 6, Travel, Recreation, Wildlife, and Cultural Resources, to whom was referred Senate File 128, Transfer of State Lands Exchange. Respectfully report, same back to the House with the recommendation that it do pass. Ayes, Representatives Angelos, Burkhart, Byron, Larson, Newsom, Singh, Western, Winter. Noes, Representative Storer. Representative Newsom, Chairman. Senate File 137, sponsored by Senator Steinmetz. Subdivisions, fencing requirements, an act relating to planning and zoning. Mr. Speaker, your committee number 5, Agriculture, State, and Public Lands and Water Resources, to whom was referred Senate File 137 engrossed. subdivisions, fencing requirements. Respectfully report, same back to the House with the recommendation that it do pass. Ayes. Representatives Alaman, Allred, Banks, Conrad, Crago, Davis, Eklund, Slagle, Winter. Representative Eklund, Chairman.
Re-referrals. Vice Chair, Chairman Brown.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I would like to re-refer Senate File 53 to Committee Number 2 Appropriations, please.
Without objection, Senate File 53 is re-referred to Committee Number 2 Appropriations. Chief, do we have some enrolled acts? We'll stand at ease for just a minute. We're at that order of business of signing of enrolled acts. The first enrolled act for our consideration is House Enrolled Act number 27. The reading clerk will read the enrolled act.
House Enrolled Act 27 being original House Bill 86. An act relating to digital assets, prohibiting the compelled production of a private key that relates to a digital asset, digital identity or other interest or right except as specified, providing a definition, repealing a definition, and providing for an effective date, being enacted by the legislature of the state of Wyoming.
I am about to sign House Enrolled Act number 27 being original House Bill 86. I have so signed. The next enrolled act for our consideration is House Enrolled Act number 28. The reading clerk will read the enrolled act.
House Enrolled Act number 28 being original House Bill 57. An act relating to defense forces and affairs, adopting uniform definitions of armed forces and uniformed services to align with federal law, expanding uniformed service members entitled to participate in programs under state law, making conforming amendments and providing for an effective date, being enacted by the legislature of the state of Wyoming.
I am about to sign House Enrolled Act number 28, being original House Bill 57. I have so signed. Congratulations, Representative Brown. The next enrolled act for our consideration is House Enrolled Act number 29. The reading clerk will read the enrolled act.
House Enrolled Act 29 being original House Bill 15, an act relating to counties, clarifying that boards of county commissioners do not have authority to dissolve archaeological, geological, and historical museums under their general authority to dissolve county-related boards and commissions, and providing for an effective date, being enacted by the legislature of the state of Wyoming.
I am about to sign House Enrolled Act number 29, being original House Bill 15. I have so signed. The next enrolled act for our consideration is House Enrolled Act number 30. The reading clerk will read the enrolled act.
House Enrolled Act 30 being original House Bill 5, an act relating to elections, amending the definition of registry list to include voter identification numbers, absentee ballot status, and registration dates, making conforming amendments and providing for an effective date, being enacted by the legislature of the state of Wyoming.
I am about to sign House Enrolled Act number 30, being original House Bill 5. I have so signed. The next enrolled act for our consideration is House Enrolled Act number 31. The reading clerk will read the enrolled act.
House Enrolled Act 31 being original House Bill 239, an act relating to motor vehicles, repealing requirements on leaving a motor vehicle unattended, and providing for an effective date, being enacted by the legislature of the state of Wyoming.
I'm about to sign House Enrolled Act number 31, being original House Bill 239. I have so signed. Congratulations, Representative Singh. The next enrolled act for our consideration is House Enrolled Act number 32, being original House Bill 142. Oh, I went and got a little ahead of the schedule there. I didn't let you read it in. The next one for our consideration is House Enrolled Act number 32. The reading clerk will read the enrolled act.
House Enrolled Act 32 being original House Bill 142, an act relating to cities and towns, requiring notice to specified landowners prior to the annexation of territory, and providing for an effective date, being enacted by the legislature of the state of Wyoming.
I'm about to sign House Enrolled Act number 32, being original House Bill 142. I have so signed. Congratulations, Representative Western. The next enrolled act for our consideration is House Enrolled Act number 33. The reading clerk will read the enrolled act.
House Enrolled Act 33 being original House Bill 106, an act relating to eminent domain, reimposing a moratorium on the exercise of the power of the condemnation for wind energy collector systems for a period of time, specifying applicability and providing for an effective date, being enacted by the legislature of the state of Wyoming.
I am about to sign House Enrolled Act number 33, being original House Bill number 106. I have so signed. Congratulations, Representative Slagle. The next enrolled act for our consideration is House Enrolled Act number 34. The reading clerk will read the enrolled act.
House Enrolled Act 34 being original House Bill 41, an act relating to motor vehicles, providing for the permanent registration of specified trailers, providing a fee exemption for permanently registered trailers, specifying requirements upon transfer of ownership, and providing for an effective date, being enacted by the legislature of the state of Wyoming.
I am about to sign House Enrolled Act number 34, being original House Bill number 41. I have so signed. Chief, does that clear the deck? Nope. Oh, we got some Senate ones. All right. The next enrolled act for our consideration is Senate Enrolled Act number 26. The reading clerk will read the enrolled act.
Enrolled Act, Senate Enrolled Act 26, being original Senate File 8. An act relating to public health and safety, providing that the Department of Health may make essential subsidy payments to behavioral health centers based on service needs and providing for an effective date, being enacted by the legislature of the state of Wyoming.
I'm about to sign Senate Enrolled Act number 26, being original Senate File number 8. I have so signed. The next enrolled act for our consideration is Senate Enrolled Act number 27. The reading clerk will read the enrolled act.
Senate Enrolled Act 27, being original Senate File 11. An act relating to public health and safety, amending eligibility requirements and the reimbursement system for the Wyoming Colorectal Cancer Early Detection and Prevention Program, and providing for an effective date, being enacted by the legislature of the state of Wyoming.
I am about to sign Senate Enrolled Act number 27, being original Senate File number 11. I have so signed. The next enrolled act for our consideration is Senate Enrolled Act number 28. The reading clerk will read the enrolled act.
Senate Enrolled Act 28, being original Senate File 31. An act relating to crimes and offenses, repealing a civil cause of action for and the crime of trespass to access adjacent or proximate land for resource data collection purposes, making conforming amendments and providing for an effective date, being enacted by the legislature of the state of Wyoming.
I am about to sign Senate Enrolled Act number 28, being original Senate File number 31. I have so signed. The next enrolled act for our consideration is Senate Enrolled Act number 29. The reading clerk will read the enrolled act.
Senate Enrolled Act 29, being original Senate File 25. An act relating to district and county and prosecuting attorneys, requiring each district attorney and county and prosecuting attorney to be licensed attorney and a member in good standing with the Wyoming State Bar during the term of office for which the district attorney or county and prosecuting attorney was elected or appointed, specifying applicability and providing for an effective date, being enacted by the legislature of the state of Wyoming.
I am about to sign Senate Enrolled Act number 29, being original Senate File 25. I have so signed. The next enrolled act for our consideration is Senate Enrolled Act number 30. The reading clerk will read the enrolled act.
Senate Enrolled Act 30, being original Senate File 68. An act relating to prescriptive easements, establishing prescriptive easements for water conveyances, providing requirements for the width and the use of prescriptive easements as specified, requiring the state engineer's office to post an informational document on its website, providing notice to purchasers, specifying applicability, and providing for an effective date, being enacted by the legislature of the state of Wyoming.
I am about to sign Senate Enrolled Act number 30, being original Senate File number 68. I have so signed. The next enrolled act for our consideration is Senate Enrolled Act number 31. The reading clerk will read the enrolled act.
Senate Enrolled Act 31, being original Senate File 173. An act relating to banks, banking, and finance, modifying requirements for approval of applications for proposed financial institutions with similar names to existing financial institutions, and providing for an effective date, being enacted by the legislature of the state of Wyoming.
I am about to sign Senate Enrolled Act number 31, being original Senate File number 173. I have so signed. The next enrolled act for our consideration is Senate Enrolled Act number 32. The reading clerk will read the enrolled act.
Senate Enrolled Act 32, being original Senate File 139. An act relating to crimes and offenses, expanding the offense of unlawful use of a credit card to include a charge card and a debit card, providing definitions, providing penalties, and providing for an effective date, being enacted by the legislature of the state of Wyoming.
I'm about to sign Senate Enrolled Act number 32, being original Senate File number 139. I have so signed. The next enrolled act for our consideration is Senate Enrolled Act number 33.
Senate Enrolled Act 33, being original Senate File 69, an act relating to courts, providing for the digitizing and retention of court records as specified, striking obsolete language and providing for an effective date, being enacted by the legislature of the state of Wyoming.
I am about to sign Senate Enrolled Act number 33, being original Senate File number 69. I have so signed. The next enrolled act for our consideration is Senate Enrolled Act number 34. The reading clerk will read the enrolled act.
Senate Enrolled Act 34, being original Senate File 55, an act relating to courts, amending requirements for filling chancery court vacancies and providing for an effective date, being enacted by the legislature of the state of Wyoming.
I'm about to sign Senate Enrolled Act number 34, being original Senate File numbers 55. I have so signed. The next enrolled act for our consideration is Senate Enrolled Act number 35. The reading clerk will read the enrolled act.
Senate Enrolled Act 35, being original Senate File 40, an act relating to campaign practices, specifying that federal political action committees are not required to file contribution and expenditure reports if the contributions and expenditures of the committee are exclusively related to federal candidates or issues, and providing for an effective date, being enacted by the legislature of the state of Wyoming.
I am about to sign Senate Enrolled Act number 35, being original Senate File number 40. I have so signed. The next enrolled act for our consideration is Senate Enrolled Act number 36. The reading clerk will read the enrolled act.
Senate Enrolled Act 36, being original Senate File 7, an act relating to public health and safety, amending the definition of opiate antagonist under the Emergency Administration of Opiate Antagonist Act, and providing for an effective date, being enacted by the legislature of the state of Wyoming.
I am about to sign Senate Enrolled Act number 36, being original Senate File number 7. I have so signed. Chief, does that clear the deck? Mr. Majority Floor Leader.
Mr. Speaker, I move the House adjourn until 10 a.m. tomorrow, Friday, the 17th day of February, 2023.
Committee announcements. Representative Crago.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Joint Conference Committee number 1 for House Bill 16 will meet next Tuesday, the 21st of February, upon noon recess in room 113.
Chairman Burkhart.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Your committee number 9, Minerals Business and Economic Development, will meet tomorrow morning at 9 a.m. to consider one bill, Senate File 169.
Chairman Nicholas.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Your House Appropriations will meet on adjournment to finish up, hopefully on 96, and also on 9 a.m. tomorrow morning, your Senate File 82.
Chairman Washut.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Your committee number 1, Judiciary, will meet tomorrow morning, Friday, February 17th at 7:30 in the morning in the historic Supreme Court chambers to hear a presentation on first responder suicide. And then at 8:30, we'll convene for our regular meeting in our regular room to reconsider Senate File 56 and then consider Senate File 120.
Chairman Northrup.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Your committee number 4, Education, is going to meet tomorrow morning or tomorrow at noon recess to do 3 bills. We're going to do Senate File 52, School Finance Special Education Funding, Senate. All right. Senate File 83, K-12 School Finance Leasing, and Senate File 168, Alternative Teacher Certificate. Also, if I may, Mr. Speaker, tomorrow morning you're invited to a breakfast put on by the Wyoming, it's WACT. It's the Wyoming Association of Community Colleges Trustees, and they're having breakfast for everybody if you'd like to show up, and that's from 6:30 to 8.
Representative Larson.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Your
Conference Committee to consider House Bill 9 will meet with our Senate colleagues tomorrow morning at 7:30 in W113.
Chairman Harshman.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Your committee number 3, Revenue, will meet Tuesday morning, 8 a.m., East Room 3, that's February 21st. Senate File 151, Wyoming Prescription Drug Transparency Act. We think we're going to have a pretty full house for that one. So as time allows, we will then hear Senate File 101, Wyoming Legal Tender Act. Thank you, Mr. Speaker.
Chairman Olson.
Your House Corporations, Elections, and Political Subdivisions will meet tomorrow upon noon recess in our normal place of abode to consider 2 Senate files, Senate File 113, Architect Practice Act Amendments, and Senate File 140, Building Code Requirements, Refrigerants.
Any other committee announcements? So just a note, tomorrow the Speaker Pro Tem Stith will be in the chair here, and I'm going to go to a speaker conference in Washington, D.C., so be back Tuesday. So good luck, Speaker Pro Tem Stith. With that, you've heard the majority floor leader's motion. All those in favor say aye. All those opposed, no. We stand adjourned until 10 a.m. tomorrow, February 17th, 2023.